They told him he wasn't good enough. No degree, no connections. Just a single father in borrowed clothes, walking out of that glass tower with his dignity in pieces. But when their $1 million system crashed right before his eyes, Ethan Cole saw something no one else did. The fatal flaw everyone had missed. What happened next would shake Riverton Dynamics to its core and prove that sometimes the people you reject are exactly the ones who can save you. This is the story of how one man's courage exposed the truth that nearly destroyed everything. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights of Riverton Dynamics' 23rd floor hummed with the kind of sterile efficiency that made Ethan Cole feel like a smudge on an otherwise pristine canvas. He sat in the waiting area outside Conference Room B, his hands folded in his lap, trying to ignore the way his thrift store blazer pulled tight across his shoulders. It was the nicest thing he owned, purchased 3 years ago for his wife's funeral, worn twice since then for job interviews that went nowhere. A woman in a crisp charcoal suit glanced at him as she passed, her eyes skating over him without really seeing. He was used to that. In places like this, towers of glass and steel, where everyone wore confidence like cologne, men like Ethan became furniture. Functional. Forgettable. "Mr. Cole?" A young man with a tablet and an earpiece appeared in the doorway. "They're ready for you." Ethan stood, smoothing his tie, dark blue, slightly frayed at the edges, and followed him down a corridor lined with abstract art that probably cost more than his car. The carpet was so thick it swallowed sound. Everything here whispered of money and power, of a world Ethan had only ever glimpsed from the outside. Conference Room B was smaller than he'd expected, dominated by a dark wood table that reflected the overhead lights like still water. 3 people sat on the far side, their expressions carefully neutral. The woman in the center, maybe 50, had silver hair cut in a sharp bob and eyes that assessed him in the time it took to blink. To her left, a younger man with stylish glasses and the kind of casual sweater that somehow looked expensive. To her right, an older gentleman whose suit probably cost more than Ethan's monthly rent. "Mr. Cole," the silver-haired woman said, gesturing to the chair across from them. "I'm Patricia Chen, Director of Human Resources. This is Marcus Holloway, VP of Technology, and Gerald Sampson, Senior Recruiter. Thank you for coming in." "Thank you for having me," Ethan replied, settling into the chair. It was one of those ergonomic designs that probably adjusted 17 different ways, but he kept his back straight, his hands visible on the table. Open, honest, available. Patricia's smile was professional, practiced. "I'll be frank. When Gerald brought your application to our attention, we had some concerns. You don't have a traditional background for this role." There it was, the polite corporate phrase that meant, "You don't belong here." "I understand," Ethan said carefully. "I don't have a degree. What I do have is 12 years of hands-on experience in systems analysis and data architecture. I built the entire inventory management system for Hartwell Manufacturing from scratch. Hartwell Manufacturing," Marcus interrupted, glancing at his tablet. "That's the warehouse operation in South Riverton, correct? They closed down, 18 months ago?" 2 years, Ethan corrected. "They were bought out by a larger competitor. But before that, the system I designed reduced their operational errors by 63% and saved them approximately $400,000 annually, and I'm sure it was impressive work," Patricia said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. However, Riverton Dynamics operates on a different scale. We're talking about multi-platform integration, real-time data processing across 17 international markets, security protocols that handle sensitive financial information for Fortune 500 clients. This isn't, and please don't take this the wrong way, this isn't a warehouse inventory system. The words landed like a slap, delivered with a smile. Ethan felt heat rising in his chest, but he kept his voice steady. "I understand the scope is different. That's exactly why I'm here. I learn fast. I work hard. And I've spent the last 6 months studying modern cloud architecture, machine learning integration, and—" "On your own?" Gerald cut in, leaning forward slightly. "Through online courses?" "Yes." The 3 exchanged glances. It was quick, almost imperceptible, but Ethan caught it. The silent conversation that said, "This isn't going to work." Patricia folded her hands on the table. "Mr. Cole, I want to be respectful of your time. You clearly have technical aptitude, but this position requires someone who can hit the ground running, someone with a proven track record in enterprise-level systems, someone with the right pedigree, Ethan finished quietly. An uncomfortable silence settled over the room. Marcus shifted in his chair. Gerald suddenly became very interested in his notes. "That's not what I said," Patricia replied, but her tone suggested that's exactly what she meant. "We simply need someone with more relevant experience. I'm sure you understand." Ethan understood perfectly. He understood that the years he'd spent teaching himself programming while working night shifts at a factory didn't count. He understood that building a functional system that saved a company hundreds of thousands of dollars wasn't as valuable as having the right letters after your name. He understood that the blazer that smelled like dust and the shoes he'd resoled twice himself told these people everything they needed to know about him. He was about to respond when Lucy's face flashed through his mind. 7 years old, gap-toothed smile, asking him that morning if he was going to get the job, if they were finally going to be okay. "I understand that you're looking for someone safe," Ethan said, his voice firmer now. "Someone whose resume checks all the boxes. But respectfully, some of the best innovations come from people who learn to solve problems without having access to the best resources. I taught myself coding because I couldn't afford classes. I built systems with limited budgets and ancient equipment because that's what was available. That kind of constraint breeds creativity. It breeds efficiency." Patricia's expression didn't change. "That's a compelling perspective, Mr. Cole. And in a different context, for a different role, it might be exactly what we're looking for, but for this position..." The lights flickered. All four of them glanced up reflexively. Then the lights flickered again, and the large monitor on the wall, previously dark, suddenly blazed to life. Red text scrolled across the screen, too fast to read at first, then slower, repeating. "Critical system failure, Project Atlas. Core breach, data integrity compromised." Patricia's phone buzzed. Then Marcus's. Then Gerald's. All three of them grabbed their devices simultaneously, their carefully composed professional masks cracking. "What the hell?" Marcus muttered, his fingers flying across his tablet screen. His face went pale. "No. No, no, no." The door burst open. A young woman in a blazer, breathless, eyes wide. "Marcus, you need to come now. Atlas just went down. Everything's down. The Henderson account..." "I know." Marcus was already on his feet, his chair rolling backward. "Get Dr. Reeves on the line. Get everyone in the war room. Jesus Christ, the Henderson presentation is in 2 hours. Patricia stood, her phone pressed to her ear. "I don't care what the diagnostics say, Raoul. The system is showing a complete..." She paused, listening, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Then find out why." The conference room had transformed from a place of measured judgment to controlled chaos in seconds. Gerald was typing frantically on his laptop. Marcus was already halfway out the door, shouting instructions to someone in the hallway. Patricia ended her call and looked at Ethan as if surprised he was still there. "Mr. Cole, I'm sorry, we're going to have to cut this short. An emergency has..." "It's a data cascading failure," Ethan said quietly. Everyone stopped. Patricia turned slowly to look at him. "Excuse me?" Ethan gestured to the monitor, where error logs were now streaming past in a waterfall of red text. "The system is trying to verify user data against corrupted indexes. Each verification attempt is creating new error logs, which are triggering more verification attempts. It's exponential. That's why everything's crashing." Marcus, frozen in the doorway, stared at him. "How could you possibly know that from looking at..." "Because I've seen this before," Ethan said, standing. "Different system, smaller scale, but the same cascading pattern. At Hartwell, we had a similar issue when we integrated the new inventory system with the legacy database. The architecture was trying to validate data against references that no longer existed. Every failed validation created a new process thread. Within 20 minutes, the whole system locked up." Patricia's eyes narrowed. "And what did you do?" "Isolated the verification module, cleared the error queue, rebuilt the indexes from backup, then brought the system back up in read-only mode while we identified the corrupt entries." Ethan moved closer to the monitor, his eyes tracking the error codes. "But that only works if you catch it early. If this has been running for more than..." He checked his watch, calculating. More than 15 minutes. The error logs alone could be overwhelming your storage allocation. You'd need to shut down the entire system to prevent permanent corruption. The room was silent except for the relentless ping of incoming messages on 3 different phones. Marcus walked slowly back into the room, his expression somewhere between skepticism and desperate hope. Dr. Reeves is the lead architect on Atlas. He's been with the company for 20 years. He has 2 PhDs and more industry certifications than anyone I know. Are you seriously suggesting that you, someone we were about to send home, can diagnose our flagship system better than he can? Ethan met his gaze steadily. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just telling you what I see. What you do with that information is up to you. Patricia's phone rang again. She answered, listened for 5 seconds, then closed her eyes. When she opened them, she looked at Ethan with something that might have been respect or might have been desperation. It was hard to tell. Mr. Cole, she said carefully, would you be willing to wait outside for a few minutes? Of course. He walked to the door, feeling their eyes on his back. As he stepped into the hallway, he heard Patricia's voice, low and urgent. Get him back in here. I don't care what his resume says. Get him back. But that would come later. For now, Ethan stood in the corridor while people rushed past him, everyone moving with the frantic energy of an emergency they didn't know how to solve. A young man in a rumpled button-down sprinted by, nearly colliding with Ethan, muttering into his phone, I don't know what Reeves wants us to do. The diagnostics aren't showing anything useful. An older woman with a lanyard full of security badges walked past more slowly, shaking her head. $3 million, she was saying to her companion. The Henderson contract alone is $3 million. If we can't deliver the demo, we'll deliver it, her companion said, but he didn't sound convinced. Ethan moved to the window, looking out over the city. From 23 floors up, Riverton looked like a circuit board, organized, planned, everything in its proper place. He thought about Lucy, probably in art class right now, drawing one of her elaborate princess castles. He'd promised to pick her up at 3:30. Mrs. Rodriguez from next door was on standby if he ran late, but he hated relying on her kindness more than he already did. His phone buzzed, a text from his brother Jake. How'd it go? Ethan typed back. About what I expected. Might be here a bit longer, though. Something came up. 3 dots appeared. Then, they see what you can do? Not sure yet, Ethan replied. But they're about to. He pocketed his phone as Patricia appeared in the hallway, her expression unreadable. Mr. Cole, would you mind coming back in? The conference room had filled. There were now 7 people crammed around the table, all of them looking at laptops or tablets, all of them wearing expressions ranging from worry to outright panic. The monitor on the wall now showed a dashboard of some kind, everything lit up in angry red. A man Ethan hadn't seen before stood at the head of the table, tall, late 50s, with silver hair swept back from a high forehead. He wore an expensive suit and an air of authority that suggested he was used to being the smartest person in any room. When he turned to look at Ethan, his eyes were sharp and assessing. Mr. Cole, he said, his voice deep and measured. I'm Dr. Nolan Reeves, Chief Systems Architect. I understand you have a theory about what's happening to Atlas. It wasn't a friendly tone. It was the tone of someone whose expertise had been challenged. Just an observation, Ethan said carefully, based on the error patterns I saw on the monitor. Reeves turned back to the dashboard. We've been analyzing the system for the past 20 minutes. Our diagnostics aren't showing any issues with data verification or index corruption. What we're seeing appears to be a network throughput issue, too many concurrent users creating a bottleneck. One of the younger engineers spoke up, hesitantly. But Dr. Reeves, the user load is actually below normal for this time of day. And the network monitoring shows we're only at 60% capacity, which suggests the throughput calculations are incorrect. Reeves interrupted smoothly. We need to recalibrate the load balancers and possibly add additional server nodes. He looked at Ethan with barely concealed condescension. Cascading failures don't present this way, Mr. Cole. If we had data corruption, we'd see it in the database logs. What we have here is a capacity issue. Ethan hesitated. Everything in him wanted to argue, to point out the flaws in that reasoning, but he also recognized the dynamic in the room. Dr. Reeves wasn't just an expert. He was the expert, the person everyone else deferred to. Challenging him directly, especially as an outsider, would be professional suicide. "You're right," Ethan said finally. "I'm sure you know your system better than I could from looking at it for 2 minutes." Something flickered in Reeves's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or satisfaction. "I appreciate your willingness to help, Mr. Cole. Patricia, perhaps we should let Mr. Cole go. I'm sure he has other obligations, and we can handle this internally." Patricia looked torn, glancing between Ethan and the increasingly alarming dashboard. "Mr. Cole, thank you for your time today. Gerald will be in touch about—" "Wait." Marcus was staring at his tablet, his face sheet white. "Wait, stop! Everyone stop!" The room froze. "The database logs," Marcus said, his voice shaking slightly. "I just pulled the raw transaction logs, not the filtered diagnostics. There are—" He swallowed hard. "There are currently 3.2 million error entries, and they're multiplying. Every second, there are thousands more." Reeves moved swiftly to look over Marcus's shoulder. His confident expression cracked. "That can't be right. The diagnostics are filtering out repetitive errors," another engineer said, pulling up her own screen. "Oh God, it's been hiding the scope. The actual error volume it's exactly what Mr. Cole described," Patricia said quietly. She looked at Ethan with something approaching awe. "A cascading failure." Every eye in the room turned to him. Ethan took a slow breath. "How long has the system been down?" Marcus checked his tablet. "The first error logged at 9:47 a.m. It's now 10:23. 36 minutes, Ethan said. "That's past the point where a simple restart will work. The error logs are probably consuming most of your available storage by now. And if the core data has been corrupted, if the system has been writing bad data to your primary database this whole time—" He paused, seeing the growing horror on their faces. "You need to shut everything down, now, before the corruption spreads to your backup systems." "We can't shut down," Reeves said, but his voice lacked its earlier certainty. "The Henderson presentation—" "Dr. Reeves," Patricia said, her tone allowing no argument. "If Mr. Cole is right and we don't shut down, what are we looking at?" Reeves's jaw tightened. "Potentially a complete data loss for Project Atlas and any connected systems." "Which includes?" "Client records, financial transactions, 18 months of development work." His voice was barely above a whisper. "Everything." The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia pulled out her phone. "I'm calling Lena." "The CEO?" Gerald's eyes went wide. "Patricia, if we escalate this to— she needs to know, right now." Patricia stepped out of the room, phone already to her ear. Ethan watched Dr. Reeves, saw the way the older man's hands trembled slightly as he gripped the back of a chair. This wasn't just a technical failure. It was a moment of professional crisis. Everything Reeves had built, his reputation, his authority, suddenly balanced on a knife's edge. "Mr. Cole," Reeves said without looking at him, "if you were handling this, what would be your next step?" It was an olive branch, extended with difficulty. "Immediate system shutdown," Ethan said. "All write operations stopped. Then isolate the core database and run integrity checks to determine how far the corruption is spread. If the backup systems haven't been compromised, you might be able to restore to a point before the cascade began, but you'd lose any data created in the last—" he calculated quickly, "probably the last 12 hours, minimum." 12 hours, someone muttered. "Jesus Christ." Marcus looked up from his tablet, his face grim. "The Henderson demo uses data that was uploaded yesterday afternoon. If we roll back 12 hours—" "The demo won't work," Reeves finished. "We'd be presenting them with an incomplete system. They'd walk, and they'd be justified in doing so." The door opened. Patricia returned, her expression carved from stone. "She's on her way down. ETA 3 minutes. She looked at Dr. Reeves. "Lena wants to know our options." "We don't have good options," Reeves said flatly. "We can shut down and preserve what we can, losing the Henderson account in the process. Or we can try to keep the system running long enough to fix the issue, risking total corruption." He paused. "I won't make that call alone." "No one's asking you to," Patricia replied. She turned to Ethan. "Mr. Cole, I need to know, how certain are you about the cascading failure?" All those eyes on him again. All that weight. Ethan thought about Lucy, about the rent that was due in 8 days, about the fact that he was standing in a room full of people who had been ready to dismiss him half an hour ago. He thought about how easy it would be to hedge, to soften his certainty with qualifiers and maybes. "I'm certain," he said, "and every minute you wait makes it worse." Patricia nodded once, decisively. "Then we shut down." "Wait," Reeves said. "We should at least—" "We shut down," Patricia repeated. "Marcus, initiate emergency protocols. I'll inform Lena. Gerald, start drafting a communication for the Henderson team. Everyone else, prepare for a full diagnostic and recovery operation." The room exploded into motion. People grabbed laptops, made calls, typed frantically. In the center of it all, Dr. Reeves stood very still, staring at the dashboard as it flickered and died, the red warnings replaced by a simple black screen with white text. "System offline." Ethan stepped back, pressing himself against the wall to stay out of the way. He watched them work. These people with their degrees and their credentials and their expensive clothes, all of them moving with controlled panic, none of them entirely sure what to do next. Patricia finished her call and caught Ethan's eye. She walked over, her expression softer than before. "Mr. Cole, I need you to stay. We might need your help with the recovery." "I don't work here," Ethan reminded her gently. "Not yet," she said. "But I'd like to change that." Before Ethan could respond, the door opened again, and a woman strode in with the kind of presence that made everyone else seem slightly out of focus. She was perhaps 40, wearing a charcoal suit that looked like it had been tailored specifically for her, her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her eyes swept the room, taking in every detail in seconds. Lena Whitmore, CEO of Riverton Dynamics. "Status," she said. Not a question. A command. Patricia stepped forward. "We've initiated a full system shutdown. Project Atlas experienced a cascading data failure beginning approximately 40 minutes ago. We caught it before complete corruption, but recovery will take time." "How much time?" "Unknown. Minimum several hours, possibly days, depending on—" "The Henderson presentation is in 90 minutes, Lena interrupted. "Options?" "We postpone," Reeves said. "Explain the situation, ask for a week to—" "They'll walk." Lena's gaze was sharp enough to cut glass. "They've already been approached by Nexus Corp. We postpone, we lose them." "What else?" An uncomfortable silence. Ethan cleared his throat. "You could present them with a prototype." Everyone turned to look at him. Lena's eyes fixed on him with laser focus. "And you are?" "Ethan Cole," Patricia said quickly. "He's the one who identified the problem. He was here for an interview when—" "A prototype," Lena repeated, ignoring the explanation. "Explain." Ethan felt his mouth go dry, but he pushed forward. "If the corrupted data is only from the last 12 hours, your core system architecture is intact. You can't show them real-time processing with live data, but you could demonstrate the system's capabilities using simulated data or archived sets from earlier this week. It wouldn't be the same as the full demonstration, but it would prove the concept works." Reeves shook his head. "The Henderson team specifically requested real-time capability. Showing them a simulation would be—" "Better than nothing," Lena finished. She looked at Ethan with something that might have been approval. "Can it be done in 90 minutes? Ethan hesitated. "I don't know your system well enough to say, but if the architecture is sound and you have clean archived data, theoretically, yes. It would require bypassing the corrupted modules and essentially hardwiring the demonstration to pull from static sources. It wouldn't be elegant, and anyone with technical expertise would see it's not live processing, but it would show them what the system can do," Lena said, "when it's working." She turned to Reeves. "Nolan?" The chief architect looked like he'd swallowed glass. "It's possible. We'd need to reroute the core processes, create isolated modules for the presentation environment, ensure there's no connection to the corrupted—" He stopped, seeing Lena's expression. "We can try." "You'll do more than try." Lena checked her watch. "You have 75 minutes. Use every resource you need. Patricia, delay Henderson 15 minutes. Tell them we're running final optimizations. Make it sound like we're perfecting something, not fixing something." She paused at the door, looking back at the room. Her eyes found Ethan. "Mr. Cole, you're with the recovery team. Whatever they need, you provide it. We clear?" Yes," Ethan managed. "Good." And then she was gone, leaving a wake of tension behind her. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Dr. Reeves took a deep breath and straightened his shoulders. "You heard her. Marcus, get me the system architecture diagrams. Jennifer, I need the Henderson demo specifications. Thomas, start pulling archived datasets from Monday through Wednesday, verified clean." He glanced at Ethan. "Mr. Cole, you're familiar with emergency system reconstruction?" "Some," Ethan said carefully. "Mostly smaller scale, but the principles should transfer." "Then you're with me," Reeves gestured toward the door. "We have 73 minutes to build a miracle. I hope that thrift store blazer is comfortable, because you're going to be wearing it for a while." The next hour passed in a blur of activity that Ethan would later struggle to fully recall. They moved to a larger space, the war room, someone called it, filled with monitors and workstations and a dozen people all working with intense focus. Reeves commanded the room like a general, delegating tasks, making decisions, his earlier condescension replaced by pure professional determination. Ethan found himself at a workstation next to a young woman named Jennifer, who walked him through the Atlas architecture at lightning speed. It was impressive work, elegant, efficient, clearly the product of years of refinement. The cascading failure hadn't been a design flaw. It had been a data integration issue, a new client upload that hadn't been properly sanitized before being fed into the verification system. "We should have caught it," Jennifer muttered, her fingers flying across her keyboard. "We have protocols for this exact scenario." "Protocols fail," Ethan said, working through the code on his own screen. "That's why you need people who can think beyond them." "Is that what you do? Think beyond protocols?" "I mostly just try to fix things when they break." He paused, staring at a section of code. "Wait, this verification loop. It's checking against the user database every time, even for recurring users. That's redundant. If we cached the verification results for established users, the system wouldn't need to hit the database for every single transaction." Jennifer leaned over to look at his screen. "That would reduce database calls by probably 70%, but it would require restructuring the entire user authentication module." "Not for the demo," Ethan said. "Just create a static verification table with all the established users from the archived data. The system checks there first, only queries the database for new or anomalous entries. For demonstration purposes, with controlled data, it would be functionally identical to the full system." Jennifer stared at him for a moment, then grabbed his arm. Dr. Reeves, you need to see this." What followed was a technical discussion Ethan could barely keep up with, as Reeves and 3 other engineers examined his suggestion, tested it, refined it, and ultimately implemented it in a version of the system that existed only for the Henderson demonstration. It wouldn't work for real-world deployment, not yet, but for a controlled presentation, it was exactly what they needed. 55 minutes later, with 10 minutes to spare, they had something that resembled a functional system. "It's not perfect," Reeves said, reviewing the final checks. "There are edge cases we haven't accounted for, and if they ask for anything outside the scripted demo, we're exposed. But if they follow the standard presentation flow, it'll work," Marcus said, though he didn't sound entirely convinced. Lena appeared in the doorway, flanked by 4 people in expensive suits, the Henderson team. She surveyed the room, her gaze sharp, then gave Reeves an almost imperceptible nod. "Showtime." Ethan watched from the back as Reeves and Marcus led the presentation. They were good, smooth, confident, walking the Henderson representatives through Atlas's capabilities with the practiced ease of people who'd done this 100 times. The system responded perfectly, processing simulated transactions, displaying analytics, demonstrating integration capabilities. To anyone who didn't know what had happened that morning, it looked flawless. The Henderson CEO, a woman with sharp features and sharper eyes, asked questions. Technical questions. Probing questions. Reeves answered them without hesitation, and when Marcus hit a stumbling block on one particularly complex query, Jennifer smoothly stepped in with an explanation that was both accurate and reassuring. 40 minutes later, the Henderson team left with smiles and promises to send the contract by end of day. The war room exhaled collectively. "We did it," someone said, and then everyone was talking at once, relief and exhaustion mixing into something like joy. Marcus hugged Jennifer. Another engineer literally collapsed into a chair. Even Reeves allowed himself a small smile. Ethan slipped toward the door, thinking he could disappear before anyone noticed. He'd done what they needed. He should go, pick up Lucy, get back to his real life. "Mr. Cole," he turned. Lena stood in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "Ms. Whitmore," he said, "congratulations on the walk with me." It wasn't a request. They walked in silence down a corridor that seemed to stretch forever, past offices with glass walls where people worked in isolated bubbles of concentration. Lena's heels clicked against the polished floor, a metronome of authority. "Patricia tells me you don't have a degree," Lena said finally. "No, ma'am." "No formal certifications in systems architecture." "No, ma'am." "And yet you identified a critical failure that our chief architect, a man with 2 PhDs and 20 years of experience, missed." Ethan didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. They reached a corner office, Lena's presumably, and she gestured for him to enter. The space was elegant but sparse. A desk, a few chairs, minimal decoration except for a single photograph on the desk. Lena with a young boy, both of them laughing. "Sit," she said. He sat. Lena remained standing, looking out the window at the city below. "Do you know why we nearly lost everything this morning? A data integration error that, because we've become complacent," she interrupted. "We hire the best people, give them the best resources, and then we assume that's enough. We stop questioning. We stop looking at things with fresh eyes." She turned to face him. "You walked into that conference room as someone we'd already decided didn't belong. And in 60 seconds, you saw what our entire technical team had missed." "I just happened to have seen something similar before," Ethan said. "Right place, right time." "Humility is admirable, Mr. Cole, but false humility is waste of time." Lena sat on the edge of her desk. "I looked at your file after the crisis began. Hartwell Manufacturing, the system you built there, increased efficiency by 63%. That's extraordinary. It was a small operation. That doesn't make it less extraordinary." She paused. "I also learned about your wife. I'm sorry." The words hit unexpectedly, a brief crack in the professional armor Ethan had been maintaining all day. "Thank you. You're raising your daughter alone." "Yes." "Then you understand something that many people in this building don't. What it means when there's no safety net. When failure isn't just embarrassing, it's catastrophic." Lena's eyes were sharp, but not unkind. "That kind of perspective is valuable. It makes you careful. It makes you see things others miss." Ethan wasn't sure where this was going, so he waited. "I'm not offering you the senior position you interviewed for," Lena said. "That role requires experience and credentials you don't have, and despite your impressive diagnosis this morning, I can't justify that level of placement." "Of course." Ethan felt the familiar weight of disappointment settling on his shoulders. "I understand." "I'm not finished." Lena's tone was firm. "I'm offering you a junior analyst position on the Atlas recovery team. The pay is probably less than you hoped for, and the work will be demanding. You'll report to Dr. Reeves, and I won't lie to you. He's not entirely happy about this arrangement, but you'll have access to our systems, our training resources, and our projects. You'll learn more in 6 months here than you would in 6 years anywhere else." Ethan stared at her. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you an opportunity." Lena stood, walked around her desk, and pulled out a folder. "This is the offer letter. Standard junior analyst compensation, benefits package, 60-day probationary period. Review it, and if you're interested, have it back to Patricia by end of day tomorrow." She handed him the folder. Ethan took it with hands that weren't entirely steady. "One more thing," Lena said. "What happened this morning doesn't leave this building. As far as anyone outside this company knows, we successfully completed a scheduled presentation to the Henderson team. No system failure, no crisis, no last-minute heroics. The people in that war room know what you did, and that matters. But we don't advertise our vulnerabilities to the world. Understood?" Understood. Good. Lena extended her hand. Welcome to Riverton Dynamics, Mr. Cole. Try not to save the company on your first day next time. It sets an unreasonable precedent. Ethan shook her hand, still processing. Thank you. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You haven't met your actual workload. But there was the ghost of a smile on her face. He left her office in a daze, the folder clutched in his hand like a talisman. The building seemed different now, still intimidating, still foreign, but no longer quite as impenetrable. People passed him in the hallway, and a few of them nodded, having seen him in the war room. One of them, Jennifer, actually gave him a small wave. Mr. Cole! Patricia was walking briskly toward him, her earlier stress replaced by something resembling satisfaction. I take it Lena made you an offer? She did. And? I need to read it over. Talk to... He stopped. Who am I kidding? Yes. The answer is yes. Patricia laughed, a genuine sound of relief. Good. I'll expect the paperwork tomorrow. Your start date would be next Monday, which gives you time to arrange childcare and... Wait. Ethan checked his watch. His heart sank. Oh no. Oh no, no, no. What? I was supposed to pick up my daughter 40 minutes ago. He was already moving toward the elevator. Mrs. Rodriguez is going to kill me. Lucy's going to think I forgot her. Go, Patricia said, waving him on. We'll sort out the details later. Go get your daughter. Ethan actually ran through the lobby of Riverton Dynamics, past the security desk where the guard looked at him with alarm, out into the afternoon sun that seemed almost too bright after hours under fluorescent lights. His car was in visitor parking, a 10-year-old sedan that wheezed when he started it, but somehow always got him where he needed to go. He drove too fast through downtown traffic, calling Mrs. Rodriguez to apologize, to explain, to promise it wouldn't happen again. She was gracious about it, as always, but he could hear the concern in her voice. Lucy was fine, she assured him, just worried about him. The elementary school pickup line had long since dispersed. Ethan pulled up to the curb where Mrs. Rodriguez's ancient blue Honda sat idling. She got out as he approached, and Lucy tumbled out behind her, a 7-year-old whirlwind in a purple jacket and mismatched sneakers. Daddy! She ran to him, and Ethan scooped her up, holding her tight. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry I was late. Mrs. Rodriguez said you had emergency at your interview. Lucy pulled back to look at him, her brown eyes, her mother's eyes, searching his face. Did you get fired before you even got hired? Despite everything, Ethan laughed. No, baby. Actually, he set her down, crouched to her level. Actually, I got the job. Lucy's eyes went wide. Really? The big fancy building job? The big fancy building job. She threw her arms around his neck, nearly knocking him over. Does that mean we can stay in our apartment? The question broke his heart and filled it simultaneously. Yeah, Lou, we can stay. And I don't have to change schools? No school changes. Can we get pizza? We can definitely get pizza. Lucy whooped, dancing in a circle. Ethan stood, turned to Mrs. Rodriguez with genuine gratitude. Thank you for everything. I don't know what I'd do without you. The older woman patted his arm. That's what neighbors are for, mijo. You go celebrate with your daughter. You earned it. They went for pizza, the good place with the arcade games, not the cheap place where the cheese was questionable. Lucy played skee-ball and won enough tickets for a rubber bouncy ball and a sticker, both of which she declared were the best prizes ever. They ate pepperoni and talked about her day, about her art class project, about her friend Maya, who had lost another tooth. Are you going to be gone a lot? Lucy asked suddenly, her voice smaller. At the new job? Ethan wiped pizza sauce from her chin. Some days I'll work late, but I'll always pick you up from school, or Mrs. Rodriguez will, and I'll be home for dinner. That's a promise. Mommy used to promise that too, Lucy said quietly. And then she couldn't anymore. The grief that lived in Ethan's chest, the old familiar friend that never quite left, stirred. Yeah, she did. But Mommy didn't want to break that promise. She just got sick, remember? She wanted to be there. I know. Lucy picked at her pizza crust. I just miss her. Me too, baby. Every day. They finished eating in comfortable silence, and on the drive home, Lucy fell asleep in the back seat, her new bouncy ball clutched in one small hand. Ethan carried her up to their second-floor apartment, a modest space that was mostly clean and approximately organized. He tucked her into bed, pulled the covers up to her chin, kissed her forehead. "Love you, Daddy," she murmured, half asleep. "Love you too, Lou. More than all the stars." "More than all the stars," she echoed, her voice fading. Ethan retreated to the living room, finally allowing himself to sit down. The folder from Lena sat on the coffee table where he'd dropped it. He opened it, read through the offer letter properly. The salary was less than he'd hoped for, but more than he was making now. The benefits were excellent: health insurance that would actually cover things, a retirement plan he could contribute to, professional development opportunities. It was real. It was stable. It was a chance. He thought about Patricia's expression when she'd dismissed him that morning. Polite, professional, completely certain he didn't belong. He thought about Dr. Reeves's condescension, Marcus's skepticism, the way they'd all looked through him until the moment he became useful. He thought about Lena's words. "You see things others miss." His phone buzzed. A text from Jake. "So?" "I got it," Ethan typed back. "Junior analyst position. I start Monday." 3 dots appeared, then, "Brother." "I knew it. I knew it. Drinks this weekend to celebrate?" "Can't afford drinks yet," Ethan replied. "Rain check till first paycheck? Deal. Proud of you, man. Sarah says congrats too." Ethan smiled, set his phone down. Through the thin walls, he could hear the neighbor's TV, someone walking around upstairs, the ambient sound of life being lived in close quarters. This apartment wasn't much, but it was theirs. And now, maybe, it could stay that way. He pulled out a pen, dated the offer letter, and signed his name at the bottom. Whatever came next, whether he succeeded or failed, whether he proved himself or fell short, at least he'd have tried. At least he'd been given the chance. And sometimes, that's all anyone could ask for. Outside, the city lights began to glow against the darkening sky. Ethan sat in his small living room, in his borrowed blazer that smelled like dust, holding a signed contract that felt like redemption. Monday would come. The work would be hard. The challenges would be real. But tonight, for the first time in a long time, the future felt less like a threat and more like a possibility. And that was enough. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything feel like a new beginning. Ethan stood outside Riverton Dynamics at 7:30, 15 minutes early, wearing the same blazer but a different tie, navy blue this time, borrowed from Jake, who'd insisted on contributing something to the occasion. Lucy had made him promise to text her at lunch, and Mrs. Rodriguez had squeezed his hand at the door with a whispered, "Make us proud, mijo." The lobby was already bustling with people who moved with purpose, their security badges swinging from lanyards as they swiped through turnstiles. Ethan approached the security desk where a different guard sat, younger than the one from Friday, with kind eyes and a nameplate that read, Marcus Chen. "First day?" Marcus asked, and Ethan wondered if his nervousness was that obvious. "Is it that clear?" "You've got the look. Don't worry, everyone's terrified their first day. ID?" Ethan handed over his driver's license, and Marcus typed information into his computer, then pulled out a temporary badge. "This'll get you through today. HR will have your permanent one by end of week. You're on 23, right?" "Yes." "Elevators are to your left. Good luck." The ride-up felt longer than it had on Friday, each floor a small eternity. When the doors opened on 23, Patricia was waiting in the lobby area, looking significantly less stressed than the last time he'd seen her. "Mr. Cole?" she said with a warm smile. "Right on time. How are you feeling?" "Terrified," he admitted. "Good. Means you're taking it seriously." She gestured for him to follow. "We'll start with the basics. Get you set up with IT, show you your workspace, introduce you to the team. Dr. Reeves is in meetings until 10, so you'll have time to settle in before you meet with him." They walked through a maze of corridors and open workspace areas where people hunched over monitors or gathered in small clusters discussing projects Ethan couldn't yet comprehend. Patricia kept up a steady stream of information, where the break rooms were, how the badge access worked, which conference rooms were bookable, and which were reserved for executives. "This is you," she said finally, stopping at a cubicle in a row of identical cubicles. It was small but functional: a desk, a chair, a computer with 2 monitors, and a small filing cabinet. The walls were bare beige fabric, the kind that could hold pushpins. "It's perfect," Ethan said, and meant it. "It should be here in about 15 minutes to get you set up. In the meantime," Patricia handed him a thick folder. "Employee handbook, benefits information, building policies, and your onboarding schedule for the week. There's also a welcome packet from the Atlas team. They're excited to have you." Ethan wasn't sure he believed that last part, but he appreciated the sentiment. Patricia left him with a promise to check in later, and he sat in his new chair, in his new cubicle, surrounded by the low hum of office life, feeling simultaneously grateful and utterly overwhelmed. The IT technician arrived exactly 15 minutes later, a woman in her 20s with purple streaked hair and an easy smile. "Ethan Cole? I'm Priya. Let's get you connected to our systems." She worked quickly, setting up his login credentials, walking him through the company's various platforms and protocols, explaining security procedures with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this hundreds of times. When she finished, both monitors displayed the Riverton Dynamics logo and a dashboard of applications Ethan would need to learn. "You'll get access to Atlas-specific systems once Dr. Reeves approves it," Priya explained. "Security protocol for ongoing projects. But everything else should be live." "Questions?" "About 1,000, Ethan admitted. "Normal. Just submit it tickets when things break or confuse you. We're here to help." She paused at the entrance to his cubicle. "Hey, I heard what you did Friday. With the system crash. That was impressive. Don't downplay it. Half the engineering team has been talking about it all weekend." She lowered her voice. "Between you and me, some of them are nervous. New guy comes in, spots a critical issue in minutes, makes them look bad. Just be aware of that, yeah?" "Thanks for the heads up." After Priya left, Ethan spent the next hour navigating the various systems, trying to orient himself in this new digital landscape. He was deep into reading through project documentation when a voice interrupted him. "So you're the miracle worker?" Ethan looked up. A man in his early 30s stood at the entrance to his cubicle, tall, athletic build, expensive-looking casual clothes that somehow still managed to look professional. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Ethan Cole," Ethan said, standing and extending his hand. The man shook it with a grip that was just slightly too firm. "Trevor Marsh, senior analyst on the Atlas team. Heard you had quite the dramatic interview." "Right place, right time," Ethan replied, echoing what he'd told Lena. Trevor leaned against the cubicle wall, his posture casual but his gaze sharp. "Must be nice getting hired because you happened to guess right about a system failure." The word guess hung in the air, weighted with implication. "I wouldn't call it a guess," Ethan said carefully. "I'd seen similar cascading patterns before." "At a warehouse." Trevor's smile widened slightly. "Right. Well, welcome to the big leagues. Hope you can keep up." He pushed off the wall. "Team meeting at 10:30, conference room C. Don't be late." He walked away before Ethan could respond. The interaction left a sour taste, but Ethan tried to shake it off. Not everyone would be welcoming. That was just reality. Jennifer appeared a few minutes later, much friendlier than Trevor had been. "Morning! Getting settled?" "Trying to. Your systems are extensive." That's one word for them. Overwhelming is another. She perched on the edge of his desk. "Listen, about Friday, I wanted to say thank you. What you suggested with the verification caching, it actually sparked a whole conversation over the weekend about system optimization. Dr. Reeves is considering implementing a modified version in the actual architecture." "Really? Don't look so surprised. Good ideas are good ideas, regardless of where they come from." She glanced at her watch. "I've got a call in 5, but lunch later. I can give you the unofficial tour and introduce you to the people who actually know what's going on around here." "That would be great." "Perfect. Meet you in the lobby at noon." The morning passed in a blur of information absorption. Ethan read through project briefs, system specifications, team hierarchies. The Atlas project was even more complex than he'd realized. Not just a single system, but an interconnected network of modules handling everything from user authentication to financial transactions to predictive analytics. The scope was staggering. At 10:25, he made his way to conference room C. Several people were already there, including Jennifer and Trevor. Dr. Reeves stood at the head of the table, reviewing something on his tablet. When Ethan entered, the room went quiet. "Mr. Cole," Reeves said without looking up, "take a seat." Ethan chose a chair near the middle of the table, close enough to see the presentation screen, but not so close as to seem presumptuous. Two more people filtered in, a middle-aged man with glasses and a young woman with bright red hair, and then Reeves cleared his throat. "All right, let's begin. For those who weren't here Friday, this is Ethan Cole, our new junior analyst. He'll be supporting the Atlas recovery and optimization efforts." Reeves finally looked at Ethan, his expression neutral. "Mr. Cole, this is David Chen, our database architect, and Rachel Winters, who handles quality assurance. You've already met Trevor, Jennifer, and Marcus." Nods and murmured greetings went around the table. "The Henderson contract is officially signed," Reeves continued, pulling up a slide on the screen, "which means we have approximately 6 weeks to deliver a fully functional, thoroughly tested system. No more demonstrations, no more prototypes, the real thing." He paused, letting that sink in. "The cascading failure exposed vulnerabilities we can no longer ignore. This week, we're conducting a complete architectural review. Every module, every integration point, every potential failure mode. I want comprehensive documentation on current state, identified risks, and proposed improvements." Trevor raised his hand slightly. "Do we have budget approval for significant architectural changes? Because some of these issues might require substantial restructuring." "Lena has allocated emergency resources," Reeves replied. "Within reason. We're not rebuilding from scratch, but we have flexibility to address critical concerns." His gaze shifted to Ethan. "Mr. Cole, your first assignment is to review the user authentication and verification modules. Jennifer will provide you with the relevant documentation. I want a full analysis by Friday, current functionality, identified issues, and recommendations." "Understood," Ethan said, ignoring the knot of anxiety in his stomach. 4 days to analyze systems he'd never seen before and provide meaningful recommendations. No pressure. The meeting continued for another 40 minutes, diving into technical details that sometimes went over Ethan's head. He took notes furiously, making mental flags of things he'd need to research later. When it finally ended, people dispersed quickly, each returning to their own urgent tasks. Jennifer caught up with Ethan in the hallway. "Don't look so worried. Authentication and verification are actually some of the cleaner modules. You'll be fine. I have 4 days to become an expert on systems I just learned exist. Welcome to Riverton Dynamics. Impossible deadlines are kind of our thing." She grinned. "Come on, I'll get you set up with access to the code repositories and documentation. Then lunch, and I'll explain all the office politics you need to navigate." The afternoon was intense. Jennifer walked Ethan through the authentication architecture, explaining the logic flows and integration points, pointing out where Friday's failure had originated and how it had propagated through the system. The code was elegant but complex, the product of multiple developers over several years, each leaving their own stylistic fingerprints. "The core issue," Jennifer explained, pulling up a particularly dense section of code, "is that we built for scalability but didn't adequately plan for data corruption scenarios. The system assumes data integrity and has minimal fallback protocols when that assumption fails." Ethan studied the screen. "What if you implemented verification tiers, quick checks for established users, deeper verification for new or flagged accounts, and circuit breakers that isolate problems before they cascade?" "That's actually similar to what I was thinking." Jennifer pulled up another document. "Look at this. I drafted a proposal over the weekend along those lines. Multi-tier verification with automatic isolation triggers." They spent the next hour comparing notes, refining ideas, building a framework that felt both practical and elegant. Ethan forgot to be nervous, forgot to worry about whether he belonged. This was just problem solving, the same thing he'd been doing for years, just at a larger scale. "Okay, stop," Jennifer said eventually, laughing. "If we solve the whole thing today, what are you going to present on Friday?" "Good point. Besides, you promised me lunch and it's already 2 o'clock. I'm starving." They went to a small cafe 2 blocks from the office, the kind of place that catered to the downtown business crowd with overpriced sandwiches and aspirational salads. Over food that cost more than Ethan usually spent on an entire day's meals, Jennifer provided the real orientation. Dr. Reeves is brilliant but proud, she explained, keeping her voice low. He built Atlas from the ground up, and it's his legacy. What happened Friday hurt him professionally and personally. He won't admit it, but he's embarrassed. He seems to be handling it professionally. He is, but he's also watching you closely. You made him look bad, even though you also saved his system. That's complicated. And Trevor? Jennifer grimaced. Trevor thought he was next in line for a senior analyst position. When you got hired, even at junior level, it ruffled feathers. He's competitive, territorial, and he sees you as a threat. I'm not trying to threaten anyone. Doesn't matter. You're the new person who got hired under unusual circumstances. Some people will see that as an opportunity, others as an insult. She paused. Marcus is solid. You can trust him. Rachel keeps to herself, but she's thorough and fair. David is old school, been here forever, knows where all the bodies are buried. He'll respect you if you show him you can do the work. And you? Jennifer smiled. I'm just trying to build good systems and not get crushed by office politics. Friday was terrifying, but it was also exciting, you know? Seeing someone come in with fresh eyes and spot what we'd all missed. I want more of that energy on the team. They talked for another 30 minutes. About Jennifer's background in computer science, her 4 years at Riverton, her frustrations with how slowly change happened in large organizations. She was passionate about her work in a way that reminded Ethan of himself, back when he'd first discovered how satisfying it was to solve complex technical problems. When they returned to the office, Ethan found a calendar invitation waiting for him. One-on-one meeting with Dr. Reeves, Thursday at 3 p.m. The subject line read simply, Progress Review. The week developed its own rhythm. Ethan arrived early each morning, often finding the office still quiet except for the cleaning crew finishing their rounds. He'd make coffee in the break room, significantly better than the instant powder he used at home, and settle into his cubicle with the authentication documentation spread across his monitors. The work was challenging, but not impossible. The more Ethan dug into the code, the more he understood both its elegance and its vulnerabilities. The original architects had built something impressive, but they'd built it during a different era of the company's growth, for different user volumes and different security requirements. The system had been patched and updated over the years, but the core architecture remained fundamentally unchanged. By Tuesday afternoon, Ethan had mapped the entire authentication flow, identified 6 potential failure points, and begun sketching out recommendations. He worked through lunch, barely noticing when Jennifer stopped by to check on him. You're going to burn out if you keep this pace, she warned. I'm fine. This is actually kind of fun. Fun, right. But she was smiling. Trevor's been asking around about you, by the way. Trying to figure out what your angle is. I don't have an angle. I'm just trying to do the job. That's what's confusing him. He's used to people who are always positioning, always politicking. Someone who just wants to do good work doesn't compute. Wednesday morning, Ethan was deep in code review when Trevor appeared at his cubicle. Got a minute? Sure. Ethan minimized his screens. He'd learned quickly that Trevor had a habit of reading over people's shoulders. I'm working on the transaction processing module, Trevor said, leaning against the cubicle wall in that same casual pose from Monday. Reeves wants a security audit. You've got experience with financial transactions, right? It was a test, obviously. Some. At Hartwell, we processed purchase orders and inventory transfers. Different scale than what you're handling here. Right. Well, I could use a second set of eyes on the encryption protocols if you're not too busy. The request was professional, but something about Trevor's tone suggested this wasn't about collaboration. Still, Ethan couldn't refuse without seeming uncooperative. Send me what you've got. I'll take a look. Great. Trevor straightened. By end of day? That was aggressive, given Ethan's own deadline, but he nodded. I'll do my best. Trevor walked away, and Ethan stared at his screens for a moment before pulling out his phone. He texted Jennifer. Trevor just asked me to review his encryption protocols. By end of day. This normal? 3 dots appeared, then, no, he's testing you. Give it a quick look, but don't kill yourself. Your authentication analysis takes priority. Ethan spent his lunch hour reviewing Trevor's work. The encryption implementation was solid, professional, well-documented, following industry best practices. There were a few minor optimizations Ethan could suggest, but nothing critical. He sent back a brief email with his thoughts, keeping his tone neutral and constructive. Trevor's response came within minutes. Thanks, though I was hoping for something more substantive than looks good. Thought you were supposed to be the guy who sees what everyone else misses. Ethan read the email twice, feeling the sting of condescension. He typed and deleted 3 different responses before finally sending, "Your implementation is strong. I'd suggest caching encryption keys for recurring transactions to reduce processing overhead, and consider implementing key rotation protocols if you haven't already. But these are optimizations, not critical issues." No response came. Thursday morning arrived with an email from Dr. Reeves. "Conference room C, 9 a.m. Bring your preliminary findings." Ethan's stomach dropped. The one-on-one wasn't until 3 p.m. This was something else. When he arrived at the conference room, he found Reeves, Marcus, David, and surprisingly, Lena Whitmore. The CEO looked up as he entered, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Cole," Reeves said, "thank you for coming on short notice. We've had a development." Ethan took a seat, his mind racing through possibilities, none of them good. Lena spoke first. "The Henderson team has requested an early access build. They want to begin internal testing before the official delivery date." "That's ambitious," Ethan said carefully. "That's problematic," Marcus corrected. "We're still addressing the vulnerabilities exposed by Friday's failure. Giving them access now means exposing them to systems we know are unstable." "We could provide sandboxed access," David suggested. "Limited functionality, controlled environment." "They specifically requested full system access," Lena replied. "They want to stress test our claims." Reeves leaned back in his chair. "Which brings us to our question, Mr. Cole. Based on your analysis so far, what's your assessment of the authentication module's stability?" All eyes turned to him. Ethan thought about the code he'd been reviewing, the vulnerabilities he'd identified, the recommendations he hadn't finished documenting. "The core functionality is sound," he said slowly, "but there are edge cases that could cause issues under stress testing. The verification system still doesn't have adequate fallback protocols for data inconsistencies. If the Henderson team's test data contains any anomalies, and most real-world data does, we could see similar cascading issues." Silence. "So your recommendation is," Lena prompted. "We're not ready," Ethan said. "Not for full access. A sandboxed environment with curated test data could work, but giving them unrestricted access to the current build is risky." Marcus nodded. "I agree with that assessment." "As do I," David added. Reeves was quiet for a long moment, his fingers steepled in front of him. "This puts us in a difficult position. Saying no to a major client's reasonable request makes us look unprepared or incompetent. Saying yes and then having another system failure makes us look worse," Lena countered. She looked at Ethan. "How long would it take to implement adequate safeguards? For the authentication module alone? If we focus on the critical vulnerabilities and implement circuit breakers, maybe 2 weeks. But that's just one module. If other parts of the system have similar issues, they do," Marcus said quietly. "I've been reviewing the transaction processing. There are concerns." Lena stood, walking to the window. "So we're looking at a minimum of 2 weeks, possibly more, before we can safely provide early access." "Yes," Reeves said. The admission seemed to cost him something. "Then that's what I'll tell Henderson." Lena turned back to the group. "But I need to give them something. A timeline, a plan, confidence that we're addressing their concerns seriously." She looked at Reeves. "Nolan, I need a comprehensive review of all Atlas modules. Identified risks, mitigation strategies, realistic timelines. Can you have that by Monday?" "That's..." Reeves stopped, recalculated. "Yes, but it will require pulling resources from other projects." "Do it. This is our priority." Lena gathered her tablet. "Mr. Cole, I want you on that review team. Your fresh perspective has proven valuable." She paused at the door. "And everyone in this room, what we discussed stays here. Henderson gets confident professionalism, not panicked scrambling. Clear?" Murmured agreements followed her out. After she left, Reeves stood slowly. Well, I suppose we have our weekend plans. He looked at Ethan, and there was something in his expression that might have been respect. Your honesty just saved us from a potentially catastrophic mistake. That took courage. I just answered the question, Ethan said. You answered it truthfully when you could have hedged or deflected. That matters. Reeves collected his papers. Friday's deadline for your authentication analysis still stands. The comprehensive review starts Monday. I suggest you get some rest this weekend. You'll need it. The rest of Thursday passed in intense focus. Ethan finalized his analysis, documenting each vulnerability with supporting evidence and specific recommendations. Jennifer stopped by twice to review sections and offer feedback. Even David made an appearance, gruffly approving of Ethan's methodological approach. Trevor, notably, didn't appear at all. The 3 p.m. one-on-one with Reeves was surprisingly productive. The older man reviewed Ethan's work carefully, asking probing questions, challenging assumptions, but ultimately agreeing with the core findings. This is solid work, Reeves said, and it sounded like the words surprised him. Your recommendations are practical and well-reasoned. Some will require significant implementation time, but they address the fundamental issues. He closed the document. You've been here 4 days, Mr. Cole. In that time, you've helped prevent a client relations disaster and produced analysis that some of my senior team members would need 2 weeks to complete. How? Ethan considered the question. I think when you're used to working with limited resources, you learn to be efficient. You can't afford to waste time. And when you've built systems from scratch with minimal help, you develop a sense for what matters and what doesn't. Desperation breeds focus, Reeves mused. There's truth in that. He leaned back. I'll be honest. I wasn't happy about your hiring. You represent something that challenges my assumptions about credentials and experience. But you're proving me wrong, and I respect that. He paused. I also fear it somewhat. Fear it? I've built my career on the belief that expertise requires formal training, credentials, years of structured experience. If that's not true, if someone can achieve similar or better results through unconventional paths, it raises uncomfortable questions about everything I've advocated for. Reeves met his eyes. But uncomfortable questions are often the most important ones. So I'm choosing to see your presence here as an opportunity to examine my own biases. It was perhaps the most honest thing anyone at Riverton had said to Ethan. Thank you for that, Ethan said. And for the record, I don't think formal training is valueless. Everyone on this team brings expertise I don't have. I'm learning from all of you every day. Mutual respect and mutual learning. That's the foundation of good teams. Reeves stood, signaling the meeting's end. Enjoy your weekend, Mr. Cole. Monday will be demanding. Friday morning, Ethan submitted his comprehensive authentication analysis. By noon, he'd received approving emails from Reeves, Marcus, and Jennifer. By 2 p.m., he was helping Jennifer troubleshoot an unrelated database query issue. Not part of his assigned work, but she'd asked, and he couldn't say no. At 3:30, as he was preparing to leave for Lucy's pickup, Trevor appeared at his cubicle. Got a minute? The same words as Wednesday, but the tone was different, harder. I need to leave soon for, this won't take long. Trevor stepped fully into the cubicle, crowding the space. I've been watching you this week, the way you've positioned yourself, gotten close to Reeves and Jennifer, inserted yourself into high-level meetings. I haven't positioned myself anywhere. I've been doing the work I was assigned. Right, the work that somehow always puts you in front of the important people. Trevor's smile was cold. You're smart, I'll give you that. Playing the humble outsider while carefully building your profile. But here's what you need to understand. I've been on this team for 3 years. I've put in the time, done the grunt work, earned my place. You don't get to walk in here with your sob story and your lucky diagnosis and jump the line. I'm not trying to jump any line, Ethan said, keeping his voice level. I'm just trying to do my job. Your job is junior analyst. That means you support senior team members. That means you don't contradict Dr. Reeves in meetings with the CEO. That means you know your place. I answered questions honestly. If that's a problem, it's a problem when you make the rest of us look bad. Trevor leaned in closer. Here's some free advice. Stay in your lane. Do your assigned work. Keep your head down. Stop trying to be the hero. Because if you don't, You'll find out how quickly the golden boy can become the scapegoat. He walked away before Ethan could respond. Ethan sat very still for a moment, processing the confrontation. His hands were shaking slightly, adrenaline and anger mixing. He pulled out his phone, almost texted Jennifer, then stopped. She'd already done enough to help him. He couldn't make her his constant defender. He left the office at 3:40, still rattled. The drive to Lucy's school was automatic, his mind replaying Trevor's words. By the time he pulled up to the pickup line, he'd managed to push it aside. Lucy didn't need to see him upset. "Daddy!" She climbed into the car with her usual enthusiasm, her backpack dragging behind her. "We made papier-mâché animals today. Mine's a dolphin, but it looks more like a blob with a nose." "I'm sure it's beautiful." "It's really not. Mrs. Patterson said it has character." Lucy buckled herself in. "How was your week? Did you do important computer stuff?" "I did. And you know what? I think I might actually be getting the hang of it." "That's because you're smart." Lucy said it with such absolute certainty that Ethan felt his earlier tension ease slightly. "Can we have tacos tonight?" "We can definitely have tacos." They stopped at the grocery store where Lucy insisted on helping pick out ingredients, carefully selecting the perfect avocados and debating the merits of flour versus corn tortillas. At home, they cooked together, Ethan chopping vegetables while Lucy mixed spices, both of them talking about their days. After dinner, while Lucy worked on homework at the kitchen table, Ethan's phone buzzed with an email. Subject line: Weekend Team Communication. He opened it reluctantly. It was from Trevor, CC'd to the entire Atlas team. Team. Reminder that individual contributions should be coordinated through proper channels. While initiative is appreciated, it's important that junior team members understand the approval process for recommendations that impact system architecture. Let's ensure we're maintaining professional boundaries and respecting the established hierarchy. Have a great weekend. Ethan read it 3 times, feeling heat rise in his chest. The message was ostensibly professional, but the implication was clear. Stay in your place. His phone buzzed again. A text from Jennifer. Ignore that. Trevor's just threatened. Your work this week was excellent. Another text, this one from Marcus. Trevor's email was out of line. Reeves knows it. Don't let it get to you. A third text, from a number he didn't recognize. Mr. Cole. This is David Chen. Trevor Marsh does not speak for this team. Your contributions this week were valuable and appropriate. Welcome to Riverton Dynamics. Ethan stared at his phone, something tight in his chest loosening. He wasn't alone. He had allies, even if he'd only been there a week. Daddy? Lucy looked up from her math worksheet. Are you okay? Yeah, baby, I'm okay. You look mad. Just work stuff. It's fine. Lucy studied him with her too perceptive 7-year-old eyes. Mommy used to say that when people are mean, it's because they're scared or hurting. Maybe the work people are just scared. Out of the mouths of children. Maybe you're right. I'm usually right. Lucy returned to her homework with complete confidence, leaving Ethan to marvel at her wisdom. He typed a response to Jennifer. Thanks. I appreciate the support. See you Monday. To Marcus. I won't. Thanks for having my back. To David. Thank you. That means a lot. He didn't respond to Trevor's email. Some battles weren't worth fighting directly. Saturday morning, Ethan woke to find another email, this one from Dr. Reeves, sent at 2 a.m. Mr. Cole, your authentication analysis has been distributed to the leadership team. Lena asked me to convey her appreciation for thorough, honest work. The comprehensive review meeting Monday will begin at 8 a.m. sharp. Prepare to present your findings to the full technical leadership. This will include VPs from other departments who need to understand Atlas's current state. Professional attire recommended. NR professional attire. Ethan looked at his closet. The thrift store blazer, 2 pairs of decent pants, a handful of shirts that were presentable if not impressive. He'd have to make it work. Saturday passed in a blur of Lucy-related activities, the park, the library, a movie at home because theater tickets weren't in the budget. Sunday brought laundry and meal prep and reviewing his notes for Monday's presentation. Jake called to check in, offering again to lend Ethan a suit. I'm fine with what I have, Ethan insisted. Brother, you're presenting to VPs. Let me help. I can't keep borrowing things from you. It's not borrowing. It's family. Sarah's already pulled out my gray suit. It'll fit you fine. Come by tonight. Try it on. Ethan did, and Jake was right. The suit fit well enough with minor adjustments. Standing in Jake's bathroom mirror, wearing clothes that actually looked professional, Ethan barely recognized himself. You look legit, Jake said, grinning, like someone who belongs in that glass tower. I'm not sure I do belong there. Hey, Jake's expression turned serious. Stop that. You got hired because you're good at what you do. Anyone who makes you feel otherwise is dealing with their own insecurity. Sound advice from his younger brother. Ethan carried it with him as he drove home, Lucy already asleep in the back seat, the borrowed suit carefully hung in the car. Sunday night, he couldn't sleep. He lay in bed running through his presentation, anticipating questions, worrying about things he couldn't control. At 2 a.m., he gave up and went to the living room, pulling up his analysis on his laptop, reviewing it for the 100th time. It was solid work. He knew it was. But would it be enough? The question followed him into Monday morning. Ethan arrived at Riverton Dynamics at 7:15 Monday morning, wearing Jake's gray suit, a fresh white shirt, and a confidence he didn't entirely feel. The building seemed different in the early light, less imposing maybe, or perhaps he was just getting used to it. Marcus at the security desk gave him an approving nod as he passed through. Big day, Marcus said. Heard you're presenting to the executive team. Word travels fast. Always does. You'll do great. Ethan hoped he was right. Conference Room A was larger than any space Ethan had been in at Riverton, designed for exactly this kind of high-stakes meeting. A massive oval table dominated the center, surrounded by leather chairs that probably cost more than his monthly rent. 3 walls were floor-to-ceiling windows, offering panoramic views of the city. The 4th wall was entirely screen, currently displaying the Riverton Dynamics logo. Dr. Reeves was already there, setting up his laptop. He looked up as Ethan entered, and something like approval crossed his face. Mr. Cole. Good, you're early. We'll be presenting as a team. I'll handle the overview and system architecture. You'll present your authentication findings. Marcus will cover transaction processing, and Jennifer will discuss quality assurance protocols. Understood, Ethan said, trying to ignore the flutter of nerves in his stomach. People began filtering in at 7:45. Lena arrived first, followed by Patricia and 3 people Ethan didn't recognize. 2 men and a woman, all wearing the kind of expensive business attire that screamed executive authority. Gerald appeared, then several other team members. By 7:55, 15 people filled the room. Trevor slipped in at 7:58, taking a seat near the back. His eyes found Ethan's, and something cold passed between them. At exactly 8 a.m., Lena stood. Thank you all for being here. As you know, we experienced a critical system failure 2 weeks ago that exposed fundamental vulnerabilities in Project Atlas. This meeting is to review our current state, identify risks, and establish a clear path forward. She looked at Reeves. Nolan, the floor is yours. Reeves stood, commanding the room with practiced ease. The screen behind him came to life with architectural diagrams as he walked through the Atlas system. Its purpose, its complexity, its importance to Riverton's future. He spoke for 20 minutes, his voice steady and authoritative, acknowledging the failure without dwelling on it, focusing instead on the path forward. The cascading failure revealed that our system, while functionally sound, lacks adequate fail-safe protocols, Reeves explained. We built for optimal conditions and didn't sufficiently plan for worst-case scenarios. That changes now. He advanced to the next slide. Mr. Cole has conducted a comprehensive analysis of our authentication and verification modules. Ethan? Ethan stood, his mouth suddenly dry. 15 pairs of eyes turned to him. He took a breath, centered himself, and began. Authentication is the gateway to any secure system, he said, surprised by how steady his voice sounded. It's also the most common point of failure. Our current implementation is robust for standard operations, but vulnerable to data inconsistencies and corruption. He walked them through his findings, using the slides he'd prepared but not reading from them, speaking instead to the underlying logic and risks. He explained the cascading pattern that had nearly destroyed the system, showed them the verification loops that amplified errors instead of containing them, demonstrated how a single corrupt data entry could trigger exponential failures. The fundamental issue, Ethan continued, is that our system trusts its own data absolutely. When that trust is violated, there's no graceful degradation, just catastrophic failure. He pulled up his final slide. My recommendations focus on 3 areas: implementing tiered verification protocols, establishing circuit breakers that isolate problems before they cascade, and creating fallback authentication pathways for when primary systems fail. One of the executives Ethan didn't know raised his hand, a man in his 60s with steel-gray hair. These sound like significant architectural changes. What's the implementation timeline? For basic circuit breakers and isolation protocols, approximately 2 weeks, Ethan replied. For the full tiered verification system, closer to 6 weeks. But the 2-week implementation would address the most critical vulnerabilities. And the cost? Ethan glanced at Reeves, who stepped in smoothly. We estimate approximately $200,000 in development costs for the complete implementation. The 2-week critical fix would be closer to $40,000. The executive, whose nameplate read Richard Townsend, CFO, made a note. Continue. Marcus presented next, his findings on transaction processing equally concerning. The module handled millions of dollars in financial data, and while it was secure, it wasn't resilient. A single point of failure could compromise entire transaction chains. Jennifer followed with quality assurance protocols, proposing more rigorous testing procedures and automated monitoring systems. When they finished, Lena stood again. Questions? Richard spoke first. This all sounds necessary, but I'm concerned about timeline. Henderson wants early access in 3 weeks. Can we deliver a safe system by then? No, Reeves said bluntly. Not the full system. We could provide sandboxed access to specific modules that have been hardened, but full system access would be premature. Henderson's contract is worth $12 million over 3 years, another executive said. A woman with sharp features and sharper eyes. Nameplate reading, Victoria Chen, VP Business Development. If we delay their timeline, they may walk. Nexus Corp is actively courting them. If we give them access to an unstable system and it fails during their testing, they'll definitely walk, Lena countered, and we'll lose credibility with every other potential client. We need a middle path, Patricia suggested. Limited access, carefully controlled environment, white glove support. Make them feel like VIP beta testers, not like we're hiding problems. Can we guarantee stability in a limited environment? Victoria asked, looking at Reeves. If we focus our resources on hardening the modules Henderson specifically needs, authentication, transaction processing, and basic analytics, yes. We could have those secured within 2 weeks. Reeves looked at his team. But it would require pulling everyone from other projects. Total focus on Atlas stabilization. Lena considered this. What about our other deliverables, the Meridian project, the Chen Industries integration? Those would be delayed, Reeves admitted. Meridian by at least 3 weeks. Chen by possibly 2 months. The room erupted in overlapping conversations. Victoria protested the Chen delay, arguing they couldn't afford to damage that relationship. Richard worried about the resource allocation costs. Another VP Ethan hadn't been introduced to raised concerns about team burnout. Through it all, Lena remained silent, listening, her expression unreadable. Finally, she raised one hand and the room went quiet. Here's what's going to happen, she said, her voice carrying absolute authority. Atlas stabilization becomes our company priority for the next 2 weeks. All necessary resources are allocated. Meridian and Chen clients will be informed of minor delays due to security enhancements, which is true. We give Henderson access in 3 weeks to a limited but bulletproof system. She looked around the table. And we use this as a learning opportunity. Every project team will review their own systems for similar vulnerabilities. I want comprehensive risk assessments on my desk within a month. Lena, the cost, Richard began. The cost of doing this right is less than the cost of another catastrophic failure, Lena interrupted. We nearly lost everything 2 weeks ago. That doesn't happen again. She closed her laptop with finality. Nolan, your team has full autonomy. Whatever you need, you get. Everyone else, support them however necessary. Meeting adjourned. People filed out, some still grumbling, others already on their phones making calls. Ethan started gathering his materials when Lena approached. Mr. Cole, a moment? Of course. She waited until most people had left, then spoke quietly. That was excellent work. Clear, comprehensive, honest about risks without being alarmist. You presented like someone who's been doing this for years. Thank you. I was terrified the entire time. A small smile. Good presenters usually are. It keeps them sharp. She paused. I'm curious, at any point during your analysis, did you consider softening your findings, making the problem seem less severe to avoid seeming overly negative? Ethan thought about it. No. You hired me to find problems and fix them. Pretending they're smaller than they are doesn't help anyone. That's the right answer, but it's not the answer many people give. They want to be liked, to fit in, to not rock the boat. Lena's gaze was intense. You're going to face pressure to compromise that honesty. From colleagues who feel threatened, from timelines that demand optimism, from your own desire to belong. Don't. The moment you start softening the truth is the moment you become just another voice in the chorus. That's not exactly an easy path. No, it's not. But it's the right one. She moved toward the door, then stopped. One more thing. Trevor Marsh is a competent analyst, but a political creature. He sees your success as his failure. Be aware of that. I am. Good. Patricia will send you the updated project schedule. Prepare for long days. And then she was gone, leaving Ethan alone in the vast conference room. Jennifer found him 10 minutes later, still standing by the window, processing everything. There you are. You killed it up there. Even Victoria was impressed, and she's never impressed. I think I just committed us to 2 weeks of insanity. Welcome to crisis mode. It's basically our natural state. Jennifer grinned. Come on, Reeves is gathering everyone for sprint planning. We need to figure out how to accomplish 6 weeks of work in 2. The sprint planning meeting was intense and chaotic. Reeves divided the team into subgroups, each focused on specific modules. Ethan found himself leading the authentication workstream with Jennifer and 2 other engineers he'd barely met, a quiet woman named Lisa and an enthusiastic recent graduate named Ahmed. Your analysis identified 7 critical vulnerabilities, Reeves said, pulling up Ethan's documentation. I want 4 of them resolved by end of week, the other 3 by the following Monday. Can you do that? We'll have to, Ethan replied, because what else could he say? The next 5 days blurred together into a continuous stream of code reviews, implementation sessions, testing cycles, and problem solving. Ethan arrived at 6 a.m. and left at 8 p.m., grabbing dinner from the cafeteria and eating at his desk. Mrs. Rodriguez picked up Lucy from school each day, fed her dinner, helped with homework. Ethan would stumble home exhausted, tuck Lucy in, then collapse into his own bed only to start over the next morning. On Tuesday afternoon, while debugging a particularly stubborn verification loop, Ethan noticed something odd. A section of code that should have been straightforward instead took a convoluted path through multiple functions. He traced it back, following the logic, and found himself in a part of the authentication system that wasn't documented in any of the official architecture diagrams. Jennifer, he called across their shared workspace, come look at this. She rolled her chair over. What am I looking at? This authentication pathway. It's creating duplicate user records under certain conditions, and it's not in any of the documentation. Jennifer studied the screen, her expression darkening. Oh no. What? This is legacy code from the original Atlas implementation 3 years ago. It was supposed to be deprecated when we upgraded the system last year, but she pulled up another file. Someone left it active. It's running parallel to the new authentication system. Which means what? Which means we've been creating duplicate user records for certain types of accounts for potentially years. And if those duplicates have even slightly different data, they'd trigger verification conflicts, Ethan finished, which would explain why the cascading failure happened. It wasn't just the new client upload. It was the interaction between the upload and these legacy duplicates. They stared at each other, the implications sinking in. We need to tell Reeves, Jennifer said, right now. They found him in conference room C reviewing Marcus's transaction processing code. When they explained what they'd found, his face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, understanding, and finally, resignation. Show me, he said quietly. They walked him through it, pulling up code files, demonstrating the parallel authentication pathways, showing him the duplicate records that had been accumulating in the database. With each piece of evidence, Reeves seemed to age slightly. "This is my fault," he said finally. "I architected the upgrade last year. I should have verified the legacy code was fully deprecated." "The system is complex," Jennifer offered. "These kinds of things slip through." "They shouldn't, not on a project this critical." Reeves ran his hand through his silver hair. "How bad is it? How many duplicate records are we talking about?" Ethan had already run the query. "Approximately 12,000. Out of 200,000 total users, that's 6%. 6% of our user base has been operating with corrupted authentication data for over a year," Reeves said. "It wasn't a question. And we never caught it because the duplicates were similar enough that most verification checks passed. Until the Henderson upload created enough new data to trigger mass verification failures across all the duplicates simultaneously." "That's our theory," Ethan confirmed. Reeves stood very still for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone and called Lena. "We need to meet. Now. All senior technical leadership, conference room A." He ended the call and looked at Ethan and Jennifer. "You two are presenting this. 15 minutes. The emergency meeting was smaller than Monday's session. Just Lena, Patricia, Richard, Marcus, David, and Dr. Reeves. Ethan and Jennifer laid out their findings, showing the code, the duplicate records, the timeline of accumulation. When they finished, the silence was heavy. "So the system has been fundamentally flawed for over a year," Lena said. Not a question, a statement. "Yes," Reeves said, his voice hollow. "And during that time, we've been processing financial transactions, storing sensitive client data, and building our flagship product on compromised foundations." "Yes." Richard leaned forward. "What about data integrity? Are client transactions accurate?" "Transaction processing was separate from authentication," Marcus interjected. "The financial data itself should be intact, but user accounts, activity logs, anything tied to authentication could have inconsistencies." "Could have or does have." Lena's eyes were sharp. "We'll need to run comprehensive audits to know for certain," Ethan said. "But given the duplicate patterns we're seeing, I'd estimate at least some inconsistencies exist." Patricia closed her eyes briefly. "If this becomes public..." "It doesn't," Lena said firmly. "Not until we've fixed it and can demonstrate complete remediation. This is contained within this room." She looked at each person individually. "No one else learns about the scope of this issue. Officially, we're implementing security enhancements. The duplicate record situation is classified." "We can't keep this from the full team," Reeves protested. "They need to understand what they're fixing." "The core team, the people in this room, plus your immediate workstream leads, can know. But it doesn't go wider. We cannot afford panic or leaked information." Lena turned to Ethan. "Mr. Cole, you found this. What's your recommendation for fixing it?" Ethan took a breath, aware that 15 years of someone else's work hung on his next words. "We need to identify all duplicate records, determine which version is authoritative, merge the valid data, and deprecate the duplicates. Then we need to fully remove the legacy authentication pathway and verify the new system handles all cases correctly. Finally, we run integrity checks on all associated data to catch any inconsistencies." Timeline? To do it right, 3 weeks, minimum. To do it fast but risky, 1 week. "We have 2 weeks until Henderson access," Lena said. "Can you do it in 2? If we prioritize Henderson's user base first, clean their records completely, verify their data integrity, we could have that ready in 2 weeks. The full user base cleanup would take longer." Lena considered this. "Do it. Henderson's records first, then systematic cleanup of the rest. Richard, authorize whatever resources they need. Nolan, restructure your sprint plans. This takes absolute priority." "What about the other vulnerabilities?" Marcus asked. "The circuit breakers, the tiered verification, all the work we've already started?" "Still necessary," Reeves said, "but they become secondary to data remediation. We can't build security improvements on a corrupted foundation." The meeting dissolved into logistics, resource allocation, timeline adjustments, communication protocols. Ethan felt the weight of it all pressing down on him. He'd found the problem, which was good, but now he owned part of the solution, which was terrifying. As people filed out, Reeves pulled Ethan aside. You could have stayed quiet about this, kept your head down, let the legacy code continue lurking until someone else found it, or until it caused another crisis. Why didn't you? Because staying quiet would have been wrong, Ethan said simply. Even knowing it makes your job significantly harder? Even knowing it might reflect poorly on me and the entire architectural team? The truth isn't about politics. It's just the truth. Reeves studied him for a long moment. Your integrity is going to cause you problems, Mr. Cole. People don't always appreciate inconvenient truths. I'm starting to understand that. Good. Stay uncomfortable. The moment you get comfortable is the moment you start compromising. Reeves clapped him on the shoulder. Now let's go figure out how to fix my mistake. The next week was brutal. Ethan's team worked 12-hour days, sometimes longer, systematically identifying duplicate records and determining which data was valid. It was tedious, painstaking work that required both technical skill and judgment calls about user behavior and data accuracy. Ahmed proved to be a coding prodigy, writing scripts that automated much of the detection process. Lisa was methodical and thorough, catching edge cases that would have slipped past everyone else. Jennifer coordinated between teams, keeping everyone aligned and preventing duplicated effort. And Ethan found himself making dozens of small decisions each day, judgment calls about data priority, risk assessments about cleanup approaches, trade-offs between speed and thoroughness. Each decision felt weighted with consequence. On Wednesday afternoon, Trevor appeared at their workstation. He'd been conspicuously absent from the remediation efforts, assigned instead to maintaining other systems, while the core team focused on the crisis. Heard you found the root cause, he said to Ethan, his tone carefully neutral. Jennifer and I found it together, Ethan replied. Right, the legacy authentication pathway that's been there for years. Trevor leaned against the desk. Must feel good being the hero again. I'm not trying to be a hero, I'm trying to fix a broken system. By exposing flaws that make the entire technical team look incompetent. Ethan set down his coffee and turned to face Trevor fully. What exactly is your problem with me? My problem? Trevor's fake friendliness dropped. My problem is that you've been here 3 weeks and you're already treated like some kind of expert. You're in executive meetings, making architectural decisions, getting credit for work that stands on the foundation people like me spent years building. And now you found this legacy code issue that makes everyone who came before you look like idiots. That's not what I'm trying to do. Doesn't matter what you're trying to do, that's the result. Trevor straightened. You know what I think? I think you got lucky. You saw one cascading failure that happened to match something you'd seen before, and you've been riding that luck ever since. But luck runs out, Ethan. And when it does, you'll be exposed as exactly what you are, an amateur playing in the professional leagues. He walked away before Ethan could respond. Jennifer, who'd been listening from her desk, rolled over. He's spiraling, she said quietly. Don't take it personally. How can I not take it personally? He basically just called me a fraud. He's scared. You represent everything he's been taught doesn't matter. Unconventional background, non-traditional path, raw problem-solving over credentials. If you succeed, it invalidates his entire career narrative. Jennifer paused. Also, Reeves pulled him aside yesterday and told him his attitude was affecting team morale. Trevor knows he's on thin ice. I didn't ask for any of this. I know. But you're here now, and you're good at what you do. That threatens some people. All you can do is keep doing the work. Sound advice, but it didn't make Ethan feel better. He returned to the code, losing himself in the methodical process of data cleanup. It was easier than dealing with interpersonal politics. Thursday evening, as the office emptied and Ethan prepared to leave for another late pickup of Lucy, Marcus stopped by his desk. Got a minute? Marcus asked. Sure. They walked to the break room where Marcus poured 2 cups of coffee that had been sitting too long on the burner. He handed one to Ethan and leaned against the counter. I want to tell you something, Marcus said. About 6 years ago, I was in your position. New to the company, worked my way up without the right degree, constantly having to prove myself. And I made a choice that I've regretted ever since. Ethan waited. There was a project, not as big as Atlas, but significant. I found a security vulnerability that would have required weeks to fix properly. My manager at the time, he wanted to push the launch anyway, patch it later. He made it clear that if I insisted on fixing it first, I'd be seen as not a team player. Marcus stared into his coffee. So I stayed quiet. We launched, and 3 months later that vulnerability was exploited. We lost client data. There was a lawsuit. 2 people were fired. But not you. But not me. Because I hadn't officially reported the vulnerability. I just mentioned it in passing and then let it go. Marcus met Ethan's eyes. I kept my job by compromising my integrity, and I've had to live with that ever since. Why are you telling me this? Because I see you at a similar crossroads. You found problems, you're speaking up about them, and it's making you enemies. It would be easier to soften your findings, to go along to get along. And I want you to know that if you make that choice, you'll regret it. The short-term comfort isn't worth the long-term cost. Ethan thought about Trevor's accusations, about the exhaustion that came from constantly fighting to be heard, about how much simpler it would be to just blend in. I don't know how to do anything other than tell the truth, he said finally. Even when it's hard. Then don't learn how, Marcus said. The company needs more people like you, and fewer people like who I was 6 years ago. They finished their coffee in companionable silence, and when Ethan finally left for the day, he felt less alone. Friday morning brought news that should have been celebratory. They'd successfully cleaned and verified all user records in Henderson's dataset. The authentication system was running cleanly, the duplicates were resolved, and initial testing showed stable performance. It was a major milestone, but Ethan barely had time to appreciate it before the next crisis hit. At 11 a.m., Jennifer rushed to his desk, her face pale. We have a problem, a big one. She pulled up a data comparison on her screen. I was running final verification checks on the Henderson records, comparing pre-cleanup to post-cleanup data. And I found this. Ethan studied the screen. User engagement metrics, login frequencies, feature usage, transaction volumes. The pre-cleanup data showed one pattern. The post-cleanup data showed something completely different. The engagement numbers dropped, he said slowly, by almost 40%. Because the pre-cleanup data was inflated by the duplicates, Jennifer said, her voice tight. Every time a duplicate user logged in, it counted as a separate engagement event. We were double counting, sometimes triple counting user activity. The implications hit Ethan like a punch, which means all our analytics have been wrong. All the metrics we've been reporting to clients, all the engagement numbers we've been using to justify our value proposition, they've been artificially inflated by anywhere from 30 to 50%, Jennifer finished, for over a year. They stared at each other, the weight of this discovery crushing. Reeves needs to know, Ethan said. Now. But Jennifer grabbed his arm. Wait. Think about this. If we report this, it doesn't just affect Atlas. It affects every client contract we've signed based on these metrics. Henderson, Chen Industries, Meridian, all of them were sold on engagement numbers that were fundamentally false. That's fraud. That's unintentional data corruption that happened to produce favorable results, Jennifer said, though she didn't sound convinced. There's a difference. Is there? If we know the numbers were wrong and we don't correct them, that's intentional deception. Jennifer released his arm, running her hands through her hair. You're right. I know you're right. But do you understand what you're about to do? You're not just exposing a technical flaw. You're potentially destroying contracts worth tens of millions of dollars. You're going to make enemies of people way above your pay grade. What's the alternative? Keep lying to our clients? No, I don't know. She took a breath. Okay, we tell Reeves. But Ethan, this might be the thing that ends your career here before it even really starts. Then it ends. But at least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror. They found Reeves in his office, reviewing code. When they explained what they'd discovered, he went very still. Then he closed his laptop carefully, almost mechanically. Show me the data, he said. They spent 30 minutes walking him through it. The pre-cleanup metrics, the post-cleanup reality, the scope of the inflation across different client accounts. With each data point, Reeves's expression grew more strained. This is catastrophic, he said finally. We've been selling clients inflated performance metrics for over a year. When they discover the real numbers, and they will discover them once they start testing the cleaned system, they'll feel deceived. Ethan finished, even though it was unintentional. Intent doesn't matter in contract negotiations. Reeves stood, pacing his office. Lena needs to know immediately, and Victoria, and Richard, and... He stopped. This could destroy the company. Or it could be an opportunity to demonstrate integrity, Ethan suggested quietly. We found the problem, we fixed it, and we're being transparent about the implications. We're not hiding anything. That's a very optimistic take on corporate catastrophe, Mr. Cole. It's the only take that lets us sleep at night. Reeves studied him for a long moment. You realize you could have buried this, kept quiet about the metric inflation, let clients discover it on their own down the line. By the time they did, you'd have moved on to other projects. No one would connect it back to you. That's not who I am. No, Reeves said softly. It's not. Which makes you either the most principled person I've ever met or the most naive. I haven't decided which yet. He pulled out his phone. Let's go ruin Lena's day. The emergency executive meeting convened within an hour. Lena, Patricia, Richard, Victoria, and several other VPs Ethan had never met crowded into conference room A. The tension was palpable before anyone even spoke. Ethan and Jennifer presented their findings, laying out the data comparison with clinical precision. As they talked, Victoria's face progressed from confusion to horror. Richard's jaw tightened with each slide. Lena remained expressionless, but her knuckles were white where she gripped her pen. When they finished, silence filled the room like a physical presence. Victoria spoke first, her voice dangerous and quiet. Let me make sure I understand. The engagement metrics we've been reporting to clients, the numbers that are literally written into contract value propositions, have been inflated by 30 to 50% for the past year. Yes, Ethan said. And when Henderson begins testing next week, they'll immediately see that their actual user engagement is significantly lower than what we promised. Yes. Which will likely void their contract and open us to breach lawsuits from them and every other client we've sold these false metrics to. Potentially, yes. Victoria turned to Lena. This is unacceptable. We need to get ahead of it, Lena interrupted, her voice calm despite the storm brewing. We don't wait for clients to discover it. We disclose it immediately, explain the technical cause, demonstrate our remediation, and offer amended contract terms if necessary. That's commercial suicide, Victoria protested. We'll lose every major account. We'll lose them faster if they discover we knew about this and hid it, Patricia countered. Lena's right. Disclosure is the only path that preserves any credibility. Richard leaned forward. What about legal liability? If we disclose, aren't we basically admitting to fraudulent representation? We're admitting to an unintentional technical error that has been corrected, Lena said firmly. That's different from fraud. Our legal team will need to craft the messaging carefully, but transparency is our best defense. Our best defense is keeping our mouths shut and hoping clients don't notice the discrepancy, another VP said, an older man whose nameplate read Dennis Shaw. They'll notice, Ethan said quietly. All eyes turned to him. Henderson's analytics team is thorough. They'll spot the difference within the first week of testing, and when they do, they'll feel deceived. But if we tell them first, explain what happened, show them the cleaned data is actually more reliable. You're suggesting we spin this as an improvement? Dennis's tone was scathing. I'm suggesting we tell the truth and let clients decide how to respond, Ethan replied. Some will walk, but some might appreciate the honesty. That's a very expensive gamble, Mr. Cole. It's the right gamble, Lena said with finality. Here's what's going to happen. Legal and I will draft disclosure notices for all affected clients. Victoria, your team will prepare amended proposals with accurate metrics and adjusted pricing if necessary. Nolan, your team continues remediation work but also prepares technical documentation explaining the issue and resolution. We present everything to Henderson on Monday before their testing begins. Then we systematically reach out to other clients. Monday is in 3 days, Victoria said. Then we work through the weekend. Lena stood. I know this is a disaster, but it's a disaster we're facing honestly and transparently. That has to count for something. Meeting adjourned. Executive team, stay behind. Everyone else, thank you for your integrity in bringing this forward. Ethan, Jennifer, and Reeves filed out. In the hallway, Reeves stopped, leaning heavily against the wall. 20 years, he said. "I've bbeen building systems for this company for 20 years. And in 1 month, a junior analyst with no degree has found more critical flaws than I've identified in the past 5 years." Dr. Reeves, "No, let me finish." He looked at Ethan with something that wasn't quite resentment, but wasn't quite respect either. "You've done good work, Mr. Cole. Important work. Work that will likely save this company from worse consequences down the line. But you've also exposed me. Exposed my systems, my oversights, my pride, and I'm struggling to be gracious about that. I'm not trying to expose anyone. I'm just trying to fix problems. I know, which somehow makes it worse." Reeves pushed off the wall. "I'm going to take a walk, clear my head. Jennifer, you're in charge of the team for the rest of the day. Mr. Cole, go home. Spend time with your daughter. Monday is going to be hell." He walked away, leaving Ethan and Jennifer in the hallway. "Well," Jennifer said after a moment, "at least we're consistent. Every week you're here, we discover a new way the company is falling apart. Is it always like this?" "No, usually it's much more boring. You've brought excitement to the workplace." She managed a weak smile. "Seriously, though, you did the right thing, both times. That takes guts." "Or stupidity." "Sometimes they're the same thing." Ethan left the office at 3 p.m., earlier than he'd been able to leave all week. He picked up Lucy from school personally for the first time in days, and her squeal of delight when she saw him waiting made everything feel slightly less overwhelming. "Daddy, you're here! Mrs. Patterson said you were very busy with important work, but I knew you'd come get me eventually." "I'm sorry I've been gone so much, sweetheart." "It's okay. Mrs. Rodriguez makes really good grilled cheese, but I missed you." She grabbed his hand as they walked to the car. "Are you done saving the company yet?" Ethan had to laugh. "Where did you hear that?" "Mrs. Rodriguez said you were helping fix big problems at your work. That means you're saving the company, right? Like a superhero, but with computers." "Something like that." "That's cool. Can we get ice cream? Superheroes deserve ice cream." They got ice cream, 2 scoops each, sitting at a picnic table outside the shop, watching the autumn sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Lucy chattered about school, about her best friend Emma, who had a pet hamster, about the book they were reading in class. Normal 7-year-old concerns that had nothing to do with corrupted databases or corporate catastrophes. "Daddy?" Lucy said, chocolate ice cream on her chin. "Are you sad?" "Just tired, baby." Mrs. Rodriguez says sometimes grown-ups say tired when they mean sad or worried. Is that what you mean? Ethan looked at his daughter, her mother's brown eyes, her perceptive nature that seemed beyond her years. He could lie, keep his burdens to himself. Or he could be honest. "Work has been really hard," he admitted. "I keep finding problems that make people upset, and I'm worried that by telling the truth about these problems, I'm going to make people not like me." Lucy considered this while licking her ice cream. "Mommy used to say that doing the right thing doesn't always make you popular, but it makes you able to look in the mirror." She paused. "I don't really understand what mirrors have to do with being good, but Mommy said it a lot." Ethan felt his throat tighten. "Your mom was very smart." "I know. That's why you married her." Lucy finished her cone. "I think you should keep telling the truth even if it makes people upset. Because then you can look in mirrors and also I'll be proud of you." "You're already proud of me?" "Super proud. You have the best job and the best brain, and also you let me have ice cream before dinner." She grinned. "Don't tell Mrs. Rodriguez about that last part." They drove home as darkness fell, and Ethan felt something settle in his chest. The situation at work was still dire. Monday would still be brutal. But he had Lucy's pride and his own integrity, and maybe that was enough. That night, after Lucy was asleep, Ethan's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. He opened it hesitantly. "Mr. Cole, this is Lena Whitmore. I wanted to thank you personally for your courage in bringing forward difficult truths. What you've done these past 3 weeks, identifying the cascading failure, finding the legacy code issue, exposing the metric inflation, represents the kind of ethical leadership this company needs more of. Monday will be challenging, but know that you have my full support. Your integrity is valued here, even when it's inconvenient." Ethan read it twice, then saved the number in his contacts. It helped, knowing he wasn't entirely alone in this. But sleep didn't come easily that night. He lay in bed thinking about Henderson, about the other clients who'd discover their metrics were inflated, about Trevor's accusations and Reeves's conflicted gratitude, and Jennifer's warning that his honesty might end his career. Outside his window, the city lights glowed against the darkness. Somewhere out there, in other apartments and houses, other people were lying awake with their own worries. It was a small comfort, the shared human experience of anxiety. His phone buzzed again. Another text, this time from Jennifer. Whatever happens Monday, you did the right thing. Remember that. Then Marcus. Standing with you. We'll get through this. And finally David. Integrity matters more than comfort. Sleep well if you can. Ethan set his phone down and stared at the ceiling. He'd been at Riverton Dynamics for 3 weeks. In that time, he'd helped prevent a catastrophic system failure, discovered a year-long data corruption issue, and exposed metric inflation that could cost the company millions. He'd made both allies and enemies, earned respect and resentment in equal measure. And on Monday, he'd have to face Henderson's executives and explain why every number they'd been promised was wrong. The thought should have terrified him, and it did. But beneath the fear was something else, a stubborn certainty that honesty, however painful, was the only path worth walking. He thought of Lucy's words, "Keep telling the truth so you can look in mirrors and I'll be proud of you." Simple wisdom from a 7-year-old. But maybe that's all he needed. Monday would come. The reckoning would happen, and Ethan would face it the only way he knew how, with truth, however inconvenient. He closed his eyes and, eventually, slept. Monday arrived with gray skies that matched Ethan's mood. He'd been awake since 4 a.m., running through scenarios in his head, each one ending worse than the last. By 6, he'd given up on sleep entirely and made coffee strong enough to strip paint. Lucy found him at the kitchen table, surrounded by printouts and notes, his laptop open to slides he'd reviewed a dozen times. "Big day?" she asked, climbing into the chair beside him. "The biggest. Are you going to save the company again?" "I might lose them a lot of money instead." Lucy tilted her head, considering this. "But you're telling the truth, right?" "Yes." "Then it'll be okay. Truth is like vegetables. Nobody likes it at first, but it's good for you." Ethan had to smile despite his anxiety. "Where do you get this wisdom?" "Mrs. Rodriguez, she has a lot of sayings." Lucy grabbed a piece of his toast. "You're going to be great, Daddy. Even if people are mad at first, they'll see you were trying to help." He wished he had her confidence. The Henderson meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. Ethan arrived at Riverton at 7 to find Lena, Patricia, Victoria, and Reeves already in conference room A doing final preparations. The table was covered with documentation, technical reports, amended proposals, legal disclosures, everything they'd need to navigate the disaster they were about to disclose. "Mr. Cole," Lena said, looking up from her laptop. "You're early. Good. Let's review your portion one more time." They spent the next 90 minutes rehearsing, anticipating questions, preparing for worst-case scenarios. Victoria was brutally direct about potential client reactions, making sure everyone understood exactly how bad this could get. Patricia kept redirecting toward messaging that emphasized transparency and remediation. Reeves focused on technical accuracy, ensuring every claim could be supported with data. At 8:45, the Henderson team arrived. 3 executives, including their CEO, Karen Henderson, plus their chief technology officer and head of analytics. They carried themselves with the confidence of people who held $12 million worth of leverage. Introductions were made with professional smiles that didn't quite reach anyone's eyes. Coffee was poured, people settled into chairs, and then Lena began. "Thank you for meeting with us on short notice," she said, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "We've asked you here because our technical team has discovered an issue that affects the metrics we've provided regarding Project Atlas. Before your testing begins, we need to ensure you have complete and accurate information." Karen Henderson's expression sharpened. "What kind of issue?" Lena nodded to Reeves, who pulled up the first slide. "Over the past 2 weeks, while preparing for your early access testing, we conducted a comprehensive system review. During that review, we discovered a legacy authentication pathway that had been creating duplicate user records for approximately 14 months. The Henderson CTO leaned forward. "Duplicate records? How many?" "Approximately 6% of our user base," Reeves continued. These duplicates have been systematically identified and remediated. The system you'll be testing has been completely cleaned and verified. That sounds like good news, Karen said slowly. Why do I sense there's bad news coming? This was Ethan's cue. He stood, his mouth dry but his voice steady. The duplicate records were inflating our engagement metrics. Every time a duplicate user logged in or performed an action, it counted as separate activity. The metrics we provided in our initial proposals, the engagement numbers, the user activity rates, they were artificially elevated by 30 to 50% depending on the specific metric. The silence that followed was deafening. The Henderson head of analytics spoke first, his voice tight. You're telling us that the performance numbers you used to justify your pricing and value proposition were inflated by half? Unintentionally, yes, Patricia said quickly. This was a technical error, not deliberate misrepresentation. As soon as we discovered it, we prioritized remediation and disclosure. Prioritized disclosure after we'd already signed the contract, Karen said, her tone icy. How convenient. We discovered the full scope of the metric inflation on Friday, Lena replied. We called this meeting immediately. You're learning about this before your testing begins, not after. We're choosing transparency. You're choosing damage control. Karen stood, her two executives following suit. You sold us a system based on false data. You built your entire value proposition on inflated metrics. And now, 3 weeks before we're supposed to go live with this integration, you're telling us the real numbers are 30 to 50% lower than promised? We've prepared amended proposals, Victoria said, opening a folder. Adjusted pricing that reflects the accurate engagement levels, additional support packages, extended implementation timelines. We don't want amended proposals. We want what we paid for. Karen's eyes were hard. $12 million for a system that was supposed to deliver specific performance outcomes. Outcomes that are apparently impossible because the metrics were fiction. Not fiction, Ethan interjected. Everyone turned to look at him. He knew he should stay quiet, let the executives handle this, but he couldn't. The metrics were real, they just weren't accurate. The duplicate records were creating noise in the data. Now that they're cleaned, the system is actually more reliable. The numbers are lower, yes, but they're true. You'll be making decisions based on accurate information instead of inflated statistics. Karen's gaze fixed on him. And you are? Ethan Cole, junior analyst. I'm the one who found the duplicate records issue. Well, Mr. Cole, I appreciate your dedication to accuracy, but from a business perspective, more reliable doesn't help us when the performance is 30% below what we were promised. She turned back to Lena. We need to discuss this with our board, but I'll be frank, this feels like grounds for contract termination. We understand your frustration, Lena said, but I'd ask you to consider what this disclosure represents. We could have stayed quiet, let you discover the discrepancy during testing, then blamed it on integration issues or configuration problems. Instead, we're being completely transparent about what happened and what it means. That transparency is worth something. It's worth exactly as much as the accurate metrics are worth, the Henderson CTO said, which appears to be significantly less than what we agreed to pay. Victoria stepped in with the amended proposals, walking through adjusted pricing structures and additional value adds Riverton was offering. The Henderson team listened, asked sharp questions, and ultimately promised to provide a response within 48 hours. When they left, the atmosphere in Conference Room A was bleak. That went about as badly as expected, Victoria said once they were alone. They didn't terminate on the spot, Patricia offered. That's something. They'll terminate after their board meeting, Victoria countered. And then they'll tell every other potential client in the industry about our inflated metrics. We're done. Lena was quiet, staring at the conference room door where the Henderson team had exited. Finally, she spoke. Maybe. Or maybe some clients will value honesty over perfection. We'll find out. She left without another word. Victoria followed, shaking her head. Patricia lingered long enough to squeeze Reeves's shoulder in silent support. Then she too departed. Reeves and Ethan sat alone at the massive conference table, surrounded by abandoned coffee cups and crumpled napkins. I'm sorry, Ethan said. I shouldn't have spoken up during the meeting. That probably made it worse. Actually, you were the only one who sounded genuine, Reeves replied. Everyone else was doing damage control. You were just explaining the truth." He rubbed his face, suddenly looking older than his years. "Not that truth seems to matter much in contract negotiations. What happens now?" "Now we wait for Henderson to terminate. Then we start the same conversation with Chen Industries, Meridian, and every other client whose contracts are based on inflated metrics. We'll lose most of them. The company will take a massive revenue hit. There will probably be layoffs." Reeves looked at Ethan. "And through all of that, you need to remember that you did the right thing, even when the consequences are painful." "Will they fire me?" "I don't know. Lena values integrity, but the board values revenue. You've become the face of this crisis, fairly or not. When people look for someone to blame—" He didn't finish the sentence. Ethan returned to his cubicle feeling hollowed out. The morning's drama had drained him, and it wasn't even 10 a.m. yet. He tried to focus on work. There were still system improvements to implement, code to review, but concentration eluded him. Jennifer appeared around 11, carrying 2 sandwiches from the cafeteria. "Figured you hadn't eaten. Heard the Henderson meeting was rough." "That's an understatement. Trevor's already telling anyone who'll listen that this is all your fault. Says if you just kept quiet about the metrics, Henderson would have been happy with the clean system." "He's probably right." "He's absolutely wrong," Jennifer set a sandwich in front of him. "Happy clients who discover lies later become former clients with lawyers. You prevented a bigger disaster." "Doesn't feel that way right now." They ate in silence for a while. Other team members passed by, some offering sympathetic nods, others avoiding eye contact entirely. Word had spread quickly. By lunch, everyone knew about the Henderson disclosure and its implications. At 2 p.m., Ethan's phone buzzed with an email. Subject line, "Mandatory all-hands meeting, 4 p.m. Jennifer saw it too. She'd received the same message. "That's not good." "No," Ethan agreed. "It's not." The all-hands meeting took place in the largest conference space Riverton had, an auditorium-style room that could hold over 100 people. It was packed. Ethan found a seat near the back, trying to be invisible, but several people tracked his movement with knowing looks. Lena took the stage at exactly 4 p.m., flanked by Patricia and Richard. Her expression was composed but serious. "Thank you all for gathering on short notice," she began. "I know rumors have been circulating about Project Atlas and the Henderson account. I want to address those directly and honestly." She outlined the situation, the duplicate records discovery, the metric inflation, the Henderson disclosure. She was matter-of-fact, neither minimizing the problem nor dramatizing it, just presenting the truth. "We are currently in conversation with all affected clients," Lena continued. "Some may choose to amend their contracts. Others may choose to terminate. That's their right, and we respect it. What we won't do is hide the truth or compromise our integrity for short-term financial gain." A hand went up in the audience, someone Ethan didn't recognize. Lena nodded for them to speak. "Are there going to be layoffs?" The question everyone was thinking but afraid to ask. "Possibly," Lena said, and the honesty was brutal. "We're assessing the financial impact. If revenue decreases significantly, we'll need to make difficult decisions. But layoffs would be a last resort, and any affected employees would receive substantial severance and support." Another hand. "Who's responsible for this situation?" The room went quiet. Ethan felt eyes turning toward him. Lena's gaze swept the audience. "The duplicate records issue resulted from a deprecated code pathway that wasn't fully removed during a system upgrade. That's a technical oversight, not malicious intent. The person who discovered it, and I won't name names because this isn't about individual blame, did exactly what we should want all employees to do. They found a problem, reported it immediately, and helped fix it. We should be grateful for that integrity, not looking for scapegoats." "But if they hadn't found it, Henderson would still be a client," someone called out. "If they hadn't found it, Henderson would have discovered the discrepancy during testing and terminated with cause, probably filing a lawsuit for misrepresentation," Lena countered, her voice sharp. "We'd be in a worse position with less credibility. The discovery didn't create the problem, it exposed a problem that already existed." The meeting continued for another 30 minutes, with Lena fielding increasingly worried questions about job security, project continuations, and company stability. She handled each with the same direct honesty, making no promises she couldn't keep, offering no false reassurances. When it ended, People filed out in small clusters, speaking in low voices. Ethan tried to slip out unnoticed, but Trevor intercepted him in the hallway. "Must feel great," Trevor said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You've been here a month, and you've already put everyone's jobs at risk." "I didn't create the problem. I just found it." "You could have found it more quietly. Or better yet, not at all. So we should have kept lying to clients. We should have let sleeping dogs lie until after the contracts were secure and we'd been paid." Trevor stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You know what your problem is, Cole? You think integrity is more important than survival. But integrity doesn't pay mortgages, it doesn't feed families, and when the layoffs come, and they will come, all your precious honesty won't mean anything to the people who lose their jobs." He walked away, leaving Ethan standing alone in the corridor. The worst part was that Trevor wasn't entirely wrong. If Riverton lost major contracts, people would lose their jobs. People with families, mortgages, responsibilities, and Ethan's insistence on transparency would be part of the reason why. He made it to his car before the full weight of it hit him. Sitting in the parking garage, hands shaking slightly, he pulled out his phone and called Jake. "Hey brother, what's up?" "I think I just destroyed my company." Jake listened as Ethan explained everything. Henderson, the metrics, the all-hands meeting, Trevor's accusations. When Ethan finished, Jake was quiet for a moment. "You did the right thing," Jake said finally. "People might lose their jobs because of me. People might lose their jobs because the company was selling clients false data. That's not on you." Jake's voice was firm. "Look, I get it. You're worried about consequences. But ask yourself this. If you'd stayed quiet and Henderson discovered the truth later, would fewer people have lost their jobs? Or would it have been worse because the company's reputation would be destroyed along with the revenue?" "I don't know." "Neither do I. Because we can't see the future. But I know this. You can't build anything lasting on lies. Not systems, not relationships, not companies. You exposed a crack in the foundation. Fixing it might hurt now, but leaving it would have been catastrophic later." Ethan wanted to believe that. He needed to believe that. He drove home in a daze, barely registering the traffic. Lucy was at Mrs. Rodriguez's, finishing homework. He picked her up, managed to smile and nod through the older woman's cheerful questions about his day, and brought Lucy home. "Daddy, you're quiet," Lucy observed while they made dinner. Just spaghetti, nothing fancy, but it required enough focus to be grounding. "Just thinking about work stuff." "Is it bad?" "Maybe. I'm not sure yet." Lucy stirred the pasta sauce thoughtfully. "Remember when I broke Emma's favorite pencil at school? I didn't mean to, but I did. And I had to tell her, and she was really mad." "I remember. But then she forgave me because I told her right away instead of hiding it. Mrs. Patterson said that's what integrity means. Doing the right thing even when it's hard and people might be mad." Lucy looked up at him. "Is that what you did at work?" "Yes, exactly that." "Then Emma's rules should work for you too. People might be mad now, but they'll see you were trying to help." 7-year-old logic that somehow cut through all the complexity. Ethan hugged his daughter tightly, grateful for her presence, for the simple clarity she brought to his tangled thoughts. That night, after Lucy was asleep, Ethan's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered hesitantly. "Mr. Cole, this is Karen Henderson." Ethan sat up straighter. "Ms. Henderson, I'm surprised to hear from you. I'm calling personally, not as CEO of Henderson Industries." Her tone was different from this morning, less icy, more thoughtful. "I wanted to ask you something. When you discovered the duplicate records issue, who told you to report it?" "No one. I found it and immediately told my supervisor." "And when you discovered the metric inflation, did anyone suggest you might want to stay quiet about it?" "Someone mentioned that it would be easier, but no one directly told me to hide it." Karen was quiet for a moment. "My company has been burned before by vendors who hid problems until they became crises. We've lost money, time, and trust because people prioritize short-term comfort over long-term honesty." She paused. "What you did this morning, standing up in that meeting and explaining the technical reality without corporate spin, that took courage. Probably stupid courage from a career perspective, but courage nonetheless. I wasn't trying to be courageous. I was just trying to be honest." Those are often the same thing. Karen sighed. I can't speak for my board or what they'll decide about the contract, but I wanted you to know that your honesty matters. It complicates things, yes. It costs money, absolutely, but it's also rare enough to be valuable. Thank you. That means a lot. Take care of yourself, Mr. Cole. People like you don't last long in corporate environments. They're either promoted rapidly or crushed entirely. I hope for your sake it's the former. She hung up, leaving Ethan staring at his phone. He wasn't sure if that call had made him feel better or worse. Tuesday morning brought another email from Lena. One-on-one meeting, 11 a.m., her office. Ethan spent the hours before the meeting trying to work, failing to concentrate and wondering if he was about to be fired. At precisely 11, he knocked on Lena's door. Come in, Mr. Cole. Her office was exactly as he remembered. Elegant, sparse, professional. Lena sat behind her desk, but gestured for him to take one of the chairs across from her, rather than the more formal seating arrangement. How are you holding up? She asked. Honestly, not great. Good. If you were fine after yesterday, I'd be concerned about your grasp of reality. Lena leaned back in her chair. I wanted to meet with you for 2 reasons. First, to tell you that Henderson's board met last night. They've decided to continue with the amended contract. Ethan stared at her. They're staying? At a reduced rate and with additional oversight provisions, but yes, they're staying. Lena's expression was carefully neutral. Karen Henderson personally advocated for continuing the relationship. She apparently values transparency more than most. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything yet. We're not out of the woods. Chen Industries is still deciding, and Meridian is furious. We'll likely lose at least one major contract, possibly more. But Henderson's staying is significant. It suggests that some clients will prioritize honesty over perfection. What's the second reason? Lena opened a folder on her desk. The second reason is that I need to make a decision about your future here. You've been with us for a month. In that time, you've identified multiple critical issues that my senior technical team missed. You've demonstrated integrity even when it was professionally risky. And you've also become somewhat controversial. Trevor's not the only one who thinks I should have stayed quiet. No, he's not. Several people have expressed concern that you're too willing to expose problems without considering political implications. There's a perception that you don't understand how corporate environments work. Lena paused. They're right, by the way. You don't understand corporate politics. You just do what you think is right and deal with the consequences. Is that a problem? It depends on your perspective. From a political standpoint, it makes you a liability. You're unpredictable, potentially disruptive, likely to say inconvenient truths at inconvenient times. Lena met his eyes. From a company health standpoint, you're exactly what we need. Ethan waited, not sure where this was going. I'm promoting you, Lena said. Senior analyst, effective immediately. 20% salary increase, direct report to Dr. Reeves, and a mandate to continue doing exactly what you've been doing, finding problems, and reporting them honestly. You're promoting me? After I nearly destroyed the Henderson contract? You nearly saved us from a lawsuit by exposing the problem before they discovered it themselves. That's worth a promotion. Lena slid a paper across the desk. There are conditions. You'll be working on a special task force focused on comprehensive system audits. We're going to review every major project for similar vulnerabilities. It will be tedious, detail-oriented work that will make you even more unpopular with people who don't want their systems scrutinized. But it's necessary. Ethan picked up the paper, a formal promotion letter, complete with new salary details that made his eyes widen. This is more than 20%. I rounded up. Consider it hazard pay for dealing with Trevor. Lena almost smiled. Do you accept? Yes. Absolutely yes, thank you. Don't thank me yet. This promotion comes with a target on your back. People who resent your rapid advancement, people who feel exposed by your audits, people who preferred it when problems stayed hidden. You'll need to develop thicker skin and better political instincts. I'm not sure I'm capable of either. Then you'll learn or you'll burn out. But either way, you'll do it with integrity intact. Lena stood, extending her hand. Welcome to senior leadership, Mr. Cole. Try not to save the company more than once per quarter. It's exhausting. Ethan shook her hand, still processing. Senior analyst. Direct report to Reeves. 25% salary increase. He'd done the math quickly. It was enough to cover rent comfortably, enough to start saving, enough to feel like he and Lucy might actually be okay. He left Lena's office in a daze, the promotion letter folded carefully in his jacket pocket. In the hallway, he ran into Patricia. I heard congratulations are in order, she said warmly. Senior analyst. Well deserved. Thank you, though I'm not sure everyone will agree it's deserved. Not everyone needs to agree. Lena does, and that's what matters. Patricia lowered her voice. Between us, you've caused quite the stir. The exec team is split. Half think you're the best thing that's happened to our quality control in years. Half think you're a loose cannon who doesn't understand business realities. Lena clearly falls in the first camp. And you? I think you're exactly what this company needs, even if what we need isn't always comfortable. Patricia smiled. Keep doing what you're doing. Just maybe develop a slightly better sense of timing for your truth bombs. She walked away, leaving Ethan to wonder if better timing was even possible. Problems didn't wait for convenient moments. He returned to his cubicle to find Jennifer waiting with a bottle of sparkling cider and 2 plastic cups. Heard about the promotion, she said, pouring cider. I'd say you earned it, but honestly, you earned it about 3 times over. Henderson's staying, Ethan said. Did you hear that? I heard. Karen Henderson apparently told Victoria that she trusted companies willing to admit mistakes more than companies that pretended to be perfect, which is either very enlightened or very naive. I haven't decided which. Jennifer raised her cup. To uncomfortable truths and the idiots brave enough to tell them. Ethan clinked his cup against hers. To uncomfortable truths. They drank, and for a moment things felt almost normal. Then Trevor appeared at the cubicle entrance. Senior analyst, he said flatly. Congratulations. Trevor. No, really, congratulations. 1 month to senior level. That must be some kind of record. His smile was knife sharp. Of course, it helps when you're willing to throw the entire company under the bus to make yourself look good. That's not what happened, Jennifer said, her voice hard. Isn't it? Ethan finds problems, reports them publicly, makes everyone else look incompetent, and gets promoted for it. Seems pretty clear to me. Trevor focused on Ethan. Enjoy your promotion. Just remember that meteoric rises tend to end in meteoric falls, and when you crash, there won't be anyone there to catch you. He left before either of them could respond. He's going to be a problem, Jennifer said quietly. He already is a problem. No, I mean a serious problem. Trevor has connections on the board, family ties to one of the original investors. He can make noise that matters. Jennifer looked worried. Watch your back, Ethan. Seriously. The warning settled over him like a weight. But there was nothing he could do about Trevor's resentment except keep doing his job well and hope that competence mattered more than politics. The rest of the week passed in a blur of meetings and system audits. Ethan's new role came with new responsibilities. Leading the task force review, coordinating between departments, presenting findings to executive leadership. It was overwhelming and exciting and terrifying all at once. Chen Industries decided to terminate their contract. Meridian negotiated an amended agreement at significantly reduced rates. 2 smaller clients also walked. The financial impact was substantial. Riverton's quarterly revenue projections dropped by nearly 30%. Richard called an executive meeting Friday afternoon to discuss cost-cutting measures. Ethan wasn't invited, but he heard about it from Reeves afterward. There will be layoffs, Reeves said, his voice heavy. Not massive, but significant. Probably 20 to 30 people across various departments, mostly in sales and business development, since that's where the revenue loss hit hardest. When? End of month. HR is preparing packages now. Reeves looked at Ethan. Your name came up in the meeting. Trevor's family connection pushed for including you in the layoffs. They argued that your disruption of client relationships justified termination despite the promotion. Ethan's stomach dropped. And Lena shut it down immediately, said that terminating the person who exposed our vulnerabilities would send exactly the wrong message about company values. Richard backed her up from a legal perspective. Firing you now would look like retaliation for whistleblowing, even though you're not technically a whistleblower. Reeves paused. But the fact that it came up at all should tell you something about the opposition you're facing. People want me gone. Some people want anyone who makes them uncomfortable gone. That's not about you personally, it's about human nature and corporate politics. Reeves pulled out a chair, sitting heavily. I've been thinking a lot about integrity this past month, about what it costs and what it's worth, and I've realized something. What's that? For 20 years, I've been playing it safe, building systems that work well enough, making incremental improvements, never rocking the boat too hard. I told myself I was being professional, being strategic, but really, I was being comfortable. Reeves met Ethan's eyes. You've made me deeply uncomfortable, Mr. Cole, and I'm grateful for that, because comfortable is where systems rot from the inside. It was perhaps the most personal thing Reeves had ever said to him. I don't want people to lose their jobs because of what I found, Ethan said quietly. People are losing their jobs because we built systems on false foundations, and those foundations finally cracked. You're not the crack. You're the person who noticed it before the whole building fell down. Reeves stood. The layoffs will be hard, but they would have been worse if we'd continued selling clients inflated metrics until the lawsuit started. Remember that. Ethan tried to remember it through the weekend as he played with Lucy at the park, helped her with a school project about the solar system, and tried to pretend everything was fine. She sensed his distraction, of course. She always did. But she didn't push, just stayed close and offered occasional hugs. On Sunday evening, his phone rang. Marcus. Hey, wanted to give you a heads up before tomorrow. The layoff list got leaked somehow. Trevor's name is on it. Ethan sat down slowly. Trevor's being laid off? Yeah, apparently his work on the transaction module didn't meet expectations, and with the revenue cuts, they're trimming senior analyst positions. He's one of 3 in technical departments. Marcus paused. He's going to blame you, you know. Even though I had nothing to do with it? Especially because you had nothing to do with it. You got promoted, he got cut. That's all the narrative he needs. This is going to be bad. Yeah, Marcus agreed. It is. Just be careful tomorrow, okay? And maybe don't work late alone. The warning was ominous, but probably justified. Ethan thanked Marcus and ended the call, then sat staring at his phone. He thought about Trevor, arrogant, territorial, threatened. He thought about the promotion he'd received just days ago while others were losing their jobs. He thought about how it would look from the outside, how easy it would be to construct a narrative where Ethan was the villain. And he thought about integrity, about truth, about the cost of doing what's right. Lucy appeared beside him, climbing into his lap despite being 7 and arguably too big for it. You're worried again, she observed. I'm worried a lot lately. Is it because of the work problems? Yes. Are you still telling the truth? Always. Then it'll work out. She said it with such absolute certainty, such complete faith in the fundamental fairness of the universe, that Ethan almost believed her. He held his daughter close, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. Whatever happened tomorrow at work, whatever anger Trevor directed at him, whatever consequences followed from his honesty, this moment was real and good and worth protecting. I love you, Lucy girl. Love you too, Daddy, more than all the stars. More than all the stars, he echoed. Monday morning arrived too soon. Ethan dropped Lucy at school, drove to Riverton, and walked into the building with a sense of foreboding he couldn't shake. The lobby was quieter than usual, people speaking in hushed voices, avoiding eye contact. The layoff announcements would happen at 9 a.m., private meetings with HR, followed by escort to collect personal belongings. It was a brutal process, efficient and impersonal, designed to minimize disruption. Ethan made it to his cubicle and tried to focus on work. At 8:55, he saw HR representatives moving through the floor with folders, heading to various offices and cubicles. He watched Trevor's supervisor approach his workspace, manila folder in hand. Trevor saw them coming. His face went pale, then red, then carefully blank. He stood, followed the HR rep to a conference room. Through the glass walls, Ethan could see the brief conversation, the paperwork, Trevor's stiff posture. It took maybe 10 minutes. Then Trevor emerged, accompanied by a security guard, and walked to his cubicle to collect his things. People watched from their own workstations, the voyeuristic horror of witnessing someone else's professional execution. Trevor moved mechanically, putting belongings into a cardboard box, a coffee mug, some framed certifications, a few personal items. As he passed Ethan's cubicle, box in arms, their eyes met. The hatred in Trevor's gaze was pure and intense. His lips moved, forming words Ethan was glad he couldn't hear. Then Trevor was gone, escorted out by security, just another casualty of corporate restructuring. Jennifer appeared at Ethan's cubicle 20 minutes later, her face pale. "Did you see?" "I saw. There's going to be fallout from this. Trevor won't go quietly." "I know." And Ethan did know. Whatever came next, whatever Trevor did with his anger and resentment, it would be directed at him. The consequences of integrity were piling up. Henderson's reduced contract, Chen's termination, 28 layoffs including Trevor. Each one could be traced back, directly or indirectly, to the problems Ethan had exposed. He'd done the right thing. He was sure of that. But the right thing came with a price that others were paying. And that knowledge sat heavy in his chest as he returned to work, trying to focus on system audits and code reviews while the ghost of Trevor's hatred lingered in his mind. The office felt different now, lighter in headcount but heavier in atmosphere. Survivors walked carefully, grateful to have jobs but aware of how quickly that could change. And Ethan, promoted and protected, felt the weight of his own survival guilt mixing with the satisfaction of maintained integrity. It was a complicated feeling. But then, truth usually was. The week following the layoffs felt like walking through a minefield. Ethan came to work each day expecting consequences, expecting Trevor's promised retaliation, expecting the other shoe to drop. But days passed with relative quiet, tense and uncomfortable, but quiet. The System Audit Task Force consumed his attention. Ethan led a team of 6 engineers through comprehensive reviews of every major project, documenting vulnerabilities, proposing fixes, and presenting findings to increasingly nervous department heads. Nobody wanted to be the next person whose system had critical flaws exposed. On Wednesday afternoon, Jennifer burst into the conference room where Ethan was reviewing transaction logs with David and Lisa. "We have a problem," she said, her voice tight. "A big one." Ethan felt his stomach drop. "What kind of problem?" "Henderson problem. Their analytics team just reported anomalies in their test data. They're seeing transaction failures that shouldn't be possible with the clean system." David was already pulling up his laptop. "What kind of failures?" "Authentication loops, similar to the original cascading pattern. But that's impossible. We cleaned all the duplicate records, deprecated the legacy pathways." Jennifer looked genuinely confused. "It shouldn't be happening." They moved as a group to the war room, pulling in Marcus and Ahmed. For the next 2 hours, they dug through logs, traced code paths, and ran diagnostics. The pattern was clear. Henderson's test environment was experiencing exactly the kind of verification loops they'd spent weeks eliminating. "It's like the legacy code is still active," Lisa said, staring at the error patterns. "But we removed it. I personally verified the deprecation." "Unless someone restored it," Ahmed suggested quietly. Everyone stopped, looked at each other. "Who would do that?" Jennifer asked. "And why?" Ethan felt cold certainty settling over him. Someone who wanted to make it look like we didn't fix the problem. Someone who wanted Henderson to discover failures during testing. "Trevor," Marcus said. "He had access to the code base. He knew the system architecture." "He was laid off 6 days ago," David pointed out. His access was revoked immediately. "But he was here for half a day after the layoff announcement," Jennifer said slowly. "HR escorts you out after you pack your things, but there's always a gap. 20 minutes, maybe 30. Long enough to push a code commit restoring the legacy pathways," Ethan finished. "And if he used someone else's credentials, or if he'd already prepared the commit beforehand, he could have done it in 5 minutes. They looked at each other, the implications sinking in. "We need to tell Reeves," Marcus said. "Right now." Dr. Reeves listened to their findings with an expression that progressed from concern to fury. He pulled up the code repository history, scanning recent commits, checking access logs. "Here," he said, pointing at the screen. 6 days ago, 9:47 a.m., the morning of the layoffs, A commit restoring the deprecated authentication module, buried in a larger merge that looked like routine maintenance. Attributed to, he paused, his jaw tightening. To your account, Mr. Cole. That's not possible. I didn't make any commits that morning. I was watching the layoffs happen. I know you didn't, but Trevor clearly knew your login credentials or found a way to spoof the commit under your name. Reeves pulled up more logs. He was clever about it. The commit included several legitimate bug fixes, so it wouldn't stand out in routine reviews. The legacy code restoration was hidden in the middle, easy to miss unless you knew what to look for. This is sabotage, David said. Corporate sabotage. We need to call legal. And law enforcement, Jennifer added. This isn't just getting fired. This is deliberately trying to destroy the company's relationships and credibility. Reeves picked up his phone. Patricia, I need you and Lena in conference room C immediately. And get legal on standby. We have a situation. The emergency meeting convened within 15 minutes. Lena listened to their presentation with an expression of controlled fury that was somehow more frightening than open anger. Patricia took notes rapidly. The company attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Michelle Torres, asked pointed questions about evidence and attribution. Can you prove Trevor committed this sabotage? Michelle asked. The commit came from Ethan's account, but the timing overlaps with when Trevor was collecting his belongings, Reeves explained. And the code specifically restores elements that only Trevor had detailed knowledge of. He was the one who originally identified the legacy pathways during the audit. Circumstantial, Michelle said. A good attorney could argue coincidence or that someone else with knowledge of the system did it. Can we check security footage? Patricia suggested. If Trevor accessed Ethan's workstation during that time window, he wouldn't need physical access, Ahmed interjected. If he'd compromised Ethan's credentials beforehand, keylogger, shoulder surfing, social engineering, he could have pushed the commit remotely from his own machine. So we can't prove it was him, Lena said flatly. Not definitively, Michelle admitted. We can prove the sabotage happened. We can prove it was designed to damage Henderson's testing, but proving Trevor specifically did it would be difficult without his cooperation or a confession. What about his computer? Jennifer asked. He turned it in when he left. Could forensics find evidence? We'd need probable cause to justify that level of investigation, Michelle said. And right now, we have suspicion, not proof. Lena stood, pacing to the window. Here's our immediate problem. Henderson's testing is compromised. They're going to see failures and assume we didn't actually fix the system. Even if we explain that it's sabotage, it sounds like an excuse. We're right back where we started, looking incompetent or dishonest, possibly both. Unless we can fix it immediately and explain what happened, Ethan said. Everyone turned to look at him. We have the code history. We can show Henderson exactly what was changed, when it was changed, and that it happened after their testing environment was set up. We can demonstrate that it wasn't a failure of our original fix. It was deliberate sabotage. You want to tell them they've been sabotaged? Patricia looked skeptical. That's not exactly a confidence-building message. Neither is letting them discover failures and draw their own conclusions, Ethan countered. At least if we explain proactively, we're controlling the narrative. And we're showing again that we prioritize transparency. Lena considered this. How long to fix the Henderson environment? If we're just removing the sabotaged code and restoring the clean version, maybe 2 hours, Reeves said. But we'd also need to audit every other client environment to ensure they weren't similarly compromised. Do it. All of it. I want every environment verified clean by end of day. Lena turned to Michelle. Draft a formal report on the sabotage for our records. Include everything, timeline, code analysis, potential attribution. We might need it for insurance claims or legal action. She looked at Patricia. Schedule a call with Karen Henderson for first thing tomorrow morning. I'll tell her personally. And Trevor, Marcus asked, are we pursuing legal action? That's a question for the board and our attorneys, Lena said. But yes, we'll be exploring options. This kind of sabotage could have destroyed client relationships worth millions. There have to be consequences. The meeting broke up with marching orders for everyone. Ethan's team returned to the war room and spent the next 6 hours methodically reviewing every line of code in every client environment. They found 2 more instances of the sabotaged code, both in smaller client accounts that hadn't started testing yet. He was thorough. Jennifer said grimly as they removed the compromised code, trying to maximize damage across multiple relationships. He was angry, Ethan replied, and he blamed me for his layoff. You didn't get him laid off. His own performance did. Try telling him that. By 8 p.m., they'd verified all environments were clean. Ethan sent a final report to Reeves and Lena, then collapsed into his chair, exhausted. His phone buzzed. Mrs. Rodriguez, wondering when he'd pick up Lucy. He'd lost track of time completely. I'm so sorry, he told her when he called back. Emergency at work. I'm leaving now. She's fine, mijo. Fed, homework done, watching TV. But you sound terrible. It's been a day. Come get her when you can, and eat something. You can't save the world on an empty stomach. Ethan drove to Mrs. Rodriguez's apartment, picked up a sleepy Lucy who immediately curled into him and drove home. He carried her upstairs, tucked her into bed, still in her clothes because she was already mostly asleep, and stood in her doorway for a long moment just watching her breathe. This was what mattered. This little girl who trusted him completely, who believed in truth and fairness because she'd never been taught otherwise. Everything else, the corporate drama, the sabotage, the politics, was noise compared to this. His phone buzzed, a text from Lena. Henderson call scheduled for 8 a.m. Need you there to explain technical details. Get some rest. Another text from Jennifer. We did good work today. Trevor tried to destroy things. We saved them. That counts for something. And finally, unexpectedly, a text from an unknown number. Mr. Cole, this is Trevor Marsh. We need to talk. Meet me tomorrow, 7 a.m., coffee shop on 5th Street, across from Riverton. Come alone. Ethan stared at that last message for a long time. Everything in him said it was a bad idea. Trevor was unstable, vengeful, potentially dangerous. Meeting him alone was foolish. But another part of him, the part that believed in direct communication and resolving conflicts honestly, wanted to hear what Trevor had to say. He texted back, I'll be there. Lucy stirred in her sleep, murmuring something unintelligible. Ethan kissed her forehead, turned out the light, and went to prepare for whatever tomorrow would bring. The coffee shop on 5th Street was generic and mostly empty at 7 a.m. Ethan arrived 5 minutes early, ordered black coffee, and chose a table with a clear view of the entrance. His phone was in his pocket, Jennifer on speed dial in case things went wrong. Trevor walked in at exactly 7, looking haggard. His clothes were rumpled, his face unshaven, dark circles under his eyes. He'd lost the polished professional veneer that had always been part of his armor. Thanks for coming, Trevor said, sitting down without ordering anything. I wasn't sure I should. Probably shouldn't have, but here we are. Trevor stared at the table. I need to tell you something, and then you can do whatever you want with the information. Ethan waited. I sabotaged the Henderson environment, Trevor said, and the other 2 client accounts. Used your credentials. I'd been shoulder surfing your passwords for weeks, just in case I ever needed leverage. Did the commits the morning I got laid off. Figured it would take a few days for anyone to notice. He finally looked up. I wanted to destroy you. Wanted you to look incompetent. Wanted Henderson to terminate. Wanted everyone to see that you were just a lucky amateur who got in over his head. Why are you telling me this? Because it didn't work. Because you found it anyway, fixed it anyway, somehow turned even my sabotage into another demonstration of your competent integrity. Trevor's laugh was bitter. And because I'm tired. Tired of being angry, tired of blaming you for my own failures, tired of pretending I'm the victim here. Ethan didn't know what to say. I was a decent analyst, Trevor continued. Not great, but decent. But I spent more energy on politics than improvement, more time positioning than problem solving. And then you showed up and did everything I'd always been too afraid to do. Questioned authority, reported problems, prioritized truth over comfort. And you got rewarded for it while I got laid off. He paused. Except I didn't get laid off because of you. I got laid off because my work wasn't good enough and the company needed to cut costs. You just happened to be a convenient excuse. Trevor, let me finish, please. Trevor took a shaky breath. What I did was criminal. Corporate sabotage, computer fraud, probably half a dozen other charges. I could go to jail. Definitely will be sued. My career in this industry is over. He pulled an envelope from his jacket and slid it across the table. That's a full confession. Everything I did, how I did it, proof that you had nothing to do with it. Take it to Lena. Give it to the police, whatever you need to do. Ethan picked up the envelope, feeling its weight. Why? Because I can't live with myself otherwise. Because my anger at you doesn't justify what I did. Because, Trevor's voice cracked slightly, because you were right about integrity, about honesty, about doing the right thing even when it costs you. And I need to start living that way, even if it's too late to save my career. They sat in silence for a moment. Ethan thought about anger and resentment, about how easy it would be to hate Trevor for what he'd tried to do. But looking at the broken man across from him, he mostly felt tired sadness. What are you going to do now? Ethan asked. Turn myself in. Cooperate fully with any investigation. Try to make amends however I can. Trevor stood. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know the truth, and that none of this was actually about you. It was about my own fear and inadequacy. He walked out before Ethan could respond, leaving the confession on the table. Ethan sat there for a long time, coffee going cold, envelope in his hands. Then he pulled out his phone and called Lena. Mr. Cole, you're up early. I just met with Trevor Marsh. He confessed to the sabotage. I have a written confession. A pause. Where are you? Coffee shop on 5th Street. Stay there. I'm sending Patricia and Michelle. Don't let that confession out of your sight. 20 minutes later, Patricia and Michelle arrived. Ethan handed over the envelope and explained the meeting. Michelle read the confession carefully, her expression sharpening with each paragraph. This is comprehensive, she said. Dates, methods, motivation. He essentially gift-wrapped a criminal case for us. What happens now? Ethan asked. We report it to law enforcement, pursue civil damages for the attempted sabotage, and we use this to definitively clear your name of any involvement. Michelle looked at him carefully. How do you feel about Trevor? Honestly, mostly sad. He destroyed his career because he was too proud to accept that different paths can lead to success. Patricia touched his arm gently. That's a remarkably gracious response to someone who tried to destroy your reputation. Hate takes too much energy. I'd rather spend it on things that matter. The Henderson call at 8 a.m. went better than expected. Lena explained the sabotage, provided documentation of Trevor's confession, showed them the timeline of fixes. Karen Henderson listened carefully, asked pointed questions, and finally leaned back in her chair, visible on the video call, with something that might have been a smile. So let me make sure I understand, Karen said. You discovered sabotage in your system, identified and removed it within hours, proactively disclosed it to us before we discovered it ourselves, and provided a full confession from the perpetrator. That's correct, Lena confirmed. And the saboteur was caught because your team was thorough enough to notice code anomalies during routine testing. Yes. Karen looked at someone off screen, then back at the camera. Ms. Whitmore, in my 20 years of working with technology vendors, I have never, and I mean never, encountered a company that handles problems with this level of transparency and speed. Most would have hidden the sabotage, blamed it on us, or tried to paper over it somehow. She paused. Our board was already impressed that we stayed with you after the metric disclosure. This seals it. We're not just continuing the contract, we're expanding it. We want Riverton handling our entire data infrastructure upgrade. Lena's composure cracked slightly. Expanding? Our CTO will send over the proposal details, but we're looking at approximately $18 million over 4 years. Assuming you're interested. We're interested. Good. I'll expect your team's proposal within 2 weeks. Karen's expression softened slightly. And Ms. Whitmore, tell that junior analyst who keeps finding all your problems that he's doing excellent work. Companies need more people willing to tell inconvenient truths. After the call ended, Lena sat very still for a moment. Then she looked at Ethan, who'd been present for the technical details, and started laughing. It was the first time he'd seen her lose her professional composure completely. We just turned corporate sabotage into an $18 million contract expansion, she said. I don't even know how that happened. Honesty happened, Patricia said, smiling. Turns out some clients actually value it. Who knew? Lena composed herself, straightening her jacket. Mr. Cole, thank you for meeting with Trevor this morning. That took courage, and the confession will be crucial for legal proceedings. He was just tired of living with his own guilt, Ethan said. I didn't really do anything. You gave him the space to confess. That's not nothing. Lena stood. Take the rest of the day off. Spend it with your daughter. You've earned it. Ethan didn't argue. He left the office at 9 a.m., picked up Lucy early from school claiming a family emergency, which wasn't entirely untrue, and took her to the zoo. They spent the day looking at elephants and tigers and red pandas, eating overpriced ice cream, and talking about everything except work. Daddy, you're smiling, Lucy observed as they watched penguins waddle around their habitat. I am. Is that weird? You haven't smiled this much in forever. Did something good happen at work? Something very good. The problems got solved. All of them? Most of them. Some are still there, but they're manageable. Lucy took his hand. I'm proud of you. For fixing things and telling the truth even when it was scary. Where do you get this wisdom? You're 7. Mrs. Rodriguez says wisdom doesn't have an age limit. It just takes paying attention. Lucy swung their joined hands. Can we see the meerkats next? We can see whatever you want. They stayed until the zoo closed, then went for pizza. The good place again, because Ethan's next paycheck would include the salary increase, and he could afford small celebrations. Lucy beat him at skee-ball 3 times in a row and declared herself the champion of the world. Driving home in the evening light, Lucy asleep in the back seat clutching a stuffed penguin they'd bought at the gift shop, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not the absence of problems, but the presence of resolution. The certainty that he'd done his best, and it had been enough. His phone buzzed at a red light. A text from Jake. Heard through the grapevine that Henderson expanded their contract. Brother, you're killing it. So proud of you. Another from Jennifer. Trevor's confession is all over the company intranet. You're officially vindicated. Also, drinks to celebrate whenever you're free. You've earned them. And one from Dr. Reeves. Mr. Cole, the System Audit Task Force is being made permanent, reporting directly to Lena. She wants you to lead it. Details Monday. Well done. Ethan pulled into his apartment complex parking lot and sat for a moment reading those messages, letting them sink in. 6 weeks ago, he'd been a single father in a borrowed blazer, getting rejected at a job interview. Now he was a senior analyst leading a company-wide quality initiative with a salary that would let him and Lucy live comfortably, with the respect of colleagues and the trust of executive leadership. But more importantly, more than any of that, he could look at himself in the mirror and feel proud of the path he'd taken. The honest path, the difficult path, the right path. He carried Lucy upstairs, tucked her into bed, and stood in her doorway watching her sleep. Tomorrow he'd deal with whatever new challenges came. Tomorrow he'd lead meetings and review systems and navigate the ongoing complexity of corporate life. But tonight, he was just a father grateful for his daughter, for a job that paid fairly, for the chance to prove that integrity mattered. The weekend passed in comfortable domesticity. Ethan and Lucy cleaned the apartment, did laundry, baked cookies that came out slightly burned but tasted fine anyway. Jake and Sarah came over for dinner Saturday night, and they celebrated with cheap wine and cheaper beer, laughing about Ethan's meteoric rise from rejected applicant to department head in 6 weeks. You're like the corporate version of an action hero, Sarah said, slightly tipsy. Except instead of explosions, you have spreadsheets, and instead of saving the world, you save databases. It's very glamorous, Ethan deadpanned. Seriously, though, Jake said, more sober. You did something that most people never do. You stood by your principles even when it cost you, even when it would have been easier to look the other way. That matters. A lot of people paid a price for my principles. 28 people lost their jobs. 28 people lost their jobs because the company needed to cut costs after losing revenue from contracts based on false metrics, Jake corrected. That's not on you. You didn't create the problem. You exposed it. Big difference. Intellectually, Ethan knew that was true. Emotionally, he still carried the weight of those layoffs, but Jake's words helped lighten it slightly. Monday morning brought another surprise. Ethan arrived at work to find his cubicle empty, not abandoned, but literally empty. A note on his desk read, "Report to Office 23C, your new workspace." Patricia Office 23C was an actual office with walls and a door and a window overlooking the city. His belongings from the cubicle had been moved and arranged neatly. There was even a small plant on the windowsill he suspected Jennifer's doing. The nameplate beside the door read, Ethan Cole, Director of System Integrity. Director. Not Senior Analyst. Director. Lena appeared in the doorway before Ethan could process fully. Like your new office? Yes. Thank you. But, Director? The System Audit Task Force needs appropriate authority to be effective, and given how thoroughly you've shaken up our quality control processes in 6 weeks, Director seemed appropriate. Lena entered the office, closing the door behind her. I want to be clear about what this role entails. You'll be reporting directly to me. Your job is to find problems in our systems, our processes, our projects. You'll have authority to audit any department, review any code, question any decision. And when you find problems, which you will, you'll report them honestly, even when it's uncomfortable. So basically what I've been doing, but with a title. And a budget, and a team of 6 full-time engineers who you'll select and manage. Lena handed him a folder. Job description, compensation details, team structure. Your salary is tripling from your original junior analyst rate. And before you ask, yes, the board approved it. Even Richard, who initially thought you were a reckless troublemaker, now sees the value in institutionalizing your approach to quality. Ethan opened the folder, saw the salary number, and had to sit down. It was more money than he'd ever imagined making. It was security for Lucy, college fund contributions, the ability to stop worrying about every unexpected expense. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep doing what you've been doing. Say you'll keep finding problems and reporting them truthfully. Say you'll build a team that shares your integrity. Lena moved to the window, looking out at the city. Riverton almost died because we got comfortable with lies and convenient fictions. You saved us by insisting on uncomfortable truths. That needs to be embedded in our culture permanently, not dependent on one person's moral compass. But what about the people who resent the scrutiny, the ones who think I'm disruptive? They'll learn to adapt or they'll leave. We're building a different kind of company now, one that prioritizes genuine quality over comfortable mediocrity. She turned back to him. It won't be easy. You'll still find problems that make people angry. You'll still face resistance from departments that don't want oversight, but you'll have my full support and the authority to push back. And if I find problems in your decisions? Lena smiled. Then I expect you to tell me. Directly, honestly, with supporting evidence. I'm not exempt from scrutiny. Nobody is. That's the whole point. After Lena left, Ethan sat in his new office, in his new chair, behind his new desk, and tried to absorb the magnitude of the change. 6 weeks ago, he'd been invisible. Now he had an office with his name on the door and authority to question anyone in the company. Jennifer appeared in the doorway, grinning. Director Cole has a nice ring to it. This is insane. This is deserved. You fundamentally changed how this company thinks about quality and transparency. That's director-level impact. She handed him a coffee. Also, Marcus, David, Lisa, Ahmed, and I have all applied to be on your permanent team, just FYI. You're all overqualified. We're all tired of working in departments where problems get hidden. We want to work somewhere that values finding and fixing them. Jennifer settled into one of the office chairs. You built something here, Ethan. Not just technical improvements, but a culture shift. People are starting to realize that honesty about problems is better than hiding them. That's huge. It's going to be a lot of work. The best things usually are. The rest of Monday was a blur of meetings and planning sessions. Ethan met with HR about team structure, with IT about system access, with Patricia about communication protocols. He reviewed his new budget, substantial enough to hire consultants or specialized tools when needed. He started drafting job descriptions for his team positions. By 5 p.m., he was exhausted but exhilarated. He packed up his laptop, new, upgraded, with processing power he'd never had access to before, and headed for the elevator. Dr. Reeves intercepted him in the hallway. Director Cole, congratulations. Thank you. I'm still processing. You should process this too. Reeves handed him an envelope. From me and several other senior technical staff, we took up a collection. Ethan opened it to find a gift card to a high-end clothing store. The attached note read, "For professional attire that doesn't smell like thrift stores. You've earned it. The technical leadership team." He looked up at Reeves, throat tight. I don't know what to say. Say you'll spend it, and say you'll keep challenging us to be better. Reeves extended his hand. You've taught this old architect some important lessons about humility and integrity. Thank you for that. They shook hands, and Ethan saw genuine respect in the older man's eyes. It felt like closure to the tension that had existed between them since that first chaotic Friday. Ethan picked up Lucy from after-school care. He'd enrolled her now that he could afford it, giving Mrs. Rodriguez a break from daily pickups. Lucy bounded to the car with her usual energy, chattering about her day. Daddy, guess what? I got an A on my solar system project. Mrs. Patterson said my Saturn was the most accurate in the class. That's amazing, sweetheart. And Emma invited me to her birthday party next weekend. Can I go, please? Of course you can go. And can we get her a present, a nice one, not just a coloring book? We can get her a very nice present, whatever you think she'd like. Lucy studied him suspiciously. Why are you being so nice? Did something good happen? Something very good. I got promoted again. Again, Daddy, you're going to run out of promotions soon. Ethan laughed, the sound genuine and free. Maybe, but I'm going to enjoy them while they last. They went to the grocery store, the nice one, not the discount place, and Ethan let Lucy pick out ingredients for a special dinner without checking prices first. It was a small thing, but it felt monumental. The absence of constant financial anxiety was a freedom he'd almost forgotten existed. At home, they cooked together, chicken parmesan that actually turned out well, salad with real vegetables, and garlic bread from scratch. Lucy set the table with exaggerated care, arranging napkins and placing the salt and pepper shakers precisely in the center. This is fancy, she declared, like we're celebrating. We are celebrating. You got an A, I got promoted, and we're together. That's worth celebrating. Over dinner, Lucy told him about Emma's upcoming party, about her friend Maya who was learning to play piano, about her teacher's new glasses that made her look like a superhero. Normal 7-year-old conversation that felt precious specifically because it was normal. After dinner, while Lucy did homework at the kitchen table, Ethan's phone rang. Karen Henderson. Ms. Henderson, he answered, surprised. Good evening. Mr. Cole. I hope I'm not calling too late. Not at all. What can I do for you? I wanted to tell you something I didn't say in this morning's call with your CEO. When Trevor sabotaged your system, he was trying to make you look incompetent. But what he actually did was prove exactly how competent your team is. You found the sabotage within hours, traced it accurately, and fixed it before it could cause real damage. That's the kind of quality control most companies only claim to have. We got lucky with timing. You got thorough with process. There's a difference. Karen paused. I've convinced our board to add a clause to our expanded contract. We want you personally assigned to our account as the Quality Oversight Director. Not full-time, we understand you have broader responsibilities, but we want regular reviews from someone we know will tell us the truth. I'm honored, and a little surprised. Don't be. In business, honesty is rare enough to be valuable. You've proven you have it, even when it costs you. That's worth paying for. She paused. Also, between you and me, we're telling other companies about this, about how Riverton handled both the metric disclosure and the sabotage. You're becoming something of an industry case study in crisis management done right. After the call ended, Ethan sat staring at his phone. An industry case study. 6 weeks ago, he'd been nobody. Now he was being held up as an example of how to handle corporate crises with integrity. Daddy? Lucy appeared beside him, homework finished. Can we read together before bed? Absolutely. What are we reading? The chapter book about the girl detective. She solves mysteries by noticing things other people miss. Ethan smiled. Sounds familiar. They curled up on the couch together, Lucy leaning against him while he read aloud. She interrupted occasionally with questions or observations, her running commentary making the story longer but more enjoyable. By the time they finished 2 chapters, she was yawning. Bedtime detective, girl. But I'm not tired, Lucy protested, even as her eyes drooped. Sure you're not. Come on. He carried her to bed. She was getting heavier, growing up faster than he was ready for, and tucked her in carefully. She grabbed his hand before he could leave. Daddy, are we going to be okay now? Like, really okay? The question hit him hard. How long had she been carrying that worry? How much of his stress had she absorbed without saying anything? Yeah, sweetheart, we're really going to be okay. I have a good job that pays well. We can stay in our apartment. You can go to your school, and we don't have to worry about money all the time anymore. And you won't be so sad? I wasn't. He stopped. She deserved honesty. I was sad for a while, missing Mommy, worried about taking care of you, scared I wasn't good enough, but I'm better now. Still miss Mommy every day, but better. Me too. Miss her and better. Lucy squeezed his hand. I think she'd be proud of you for being brave and telling the truth, even when it was scary. I think she'd be more proud of you for being so strong and smart and kind when things were hard. Can we both be proud of each other? Deal. Lucy smiled sleepily. Love you more than all the stars. Love you more than all the stars, Ethan echoed. He watched her drift to sleep, her breathing evening out, her face peaceful in the dim light from the hallway. This was success, he realized. Not the title or the salary or the office with his name on the door. This moment, this peace, this security for his daughter. That was success. The next few weeks settled into a new rhythm. Ethan selected his team, Jennifer, Marcus, David, Lisa, Ahmed, and a new hire named Rachel, who came from a competitor specifically because she'd heard about Riverton's new approach to quality control. Together, they built systematic review processes, established clear reporting structures, and began auditing every major system in the company. They found problems. Of course they did. A security vulnerability in the customer database, inefficient code in the analytics platform, undocumented dependencies in the payment processing system. Each discovery was met with initial defensiveness from the responsible teams, but increasingly that defensiveness gave way to appreciation. People started requesting audits proactively, wanting to find and fix problems before they became crises. The culture was shifting, slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. 3 months after Ethan's first day at Riverton, the company held its quarterly all-hands meeting. Lena stood on the stage and announced that Riverton had not only recovered from the revenue losses, but exceeded previous projections. Henderson's expanded contract had attracted other clients who wanted the same level of transparency and quality control. The metric disclosure that could have destroyed the company had instead become a differentiator. We learned something crucial this quarter, Lena said to the assembled employees. We learned that honesty about problems is better than perfection without problems. We learned that clients value integrity over polish. And we learned that creating a culture where people can report issues without fear leads to better outcomes for everyone. After the meeting, several people approached Ethan to thank him for finding problems in their systems, for helping them improve, for showing that quality control didn't have to be adversarial. It felt surreal. Karen Henderson visited the office in person one afternoon, touring the facilities and meeting with various teams. She made a point of visiting Ethan's department, where his team was deep into auditing the new client onboarding system. This is impressive, Karen said, watching them work. Systematic, thorough, collaborative. This is what quality control should look like. We're still figuring it out, Ethan admitted, making mistakes, learning as we go. That's the point. You're building something new, and you're doing it with integrity. Karen handed him her card. When you're ready to move on from Riverton, and eventually you will be, call me. Henderson Industries could use someone like you. I'm not planning to move on anytime soon. Plans change. Just keep the card. That evening, Ethan took Lucy to their favorite park, the one with the good playground and the pond where ducks congregated hoping for breadcrumbs. They sat on a bench eating ice cream as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Daddy, remember when you were worried about your job interview? Lucy asked. Back when everything was scary? I remember. It worked out okay. Better than okay. It did. So maybe when things are scary, they can still work out. Ethan pulled her close. That's very wise, Lou. I learned it from you. You were scared, but you did it anyway. That's what brave means. They sat in comfortable silence, watching ducks paddle across the pond, listening to other children play on the swings. Normal evening sounds that felt like contentment. Ethan thought about that first interview, about sitting in conference room B with people who'd already decided he didn't belong. He thought about the panic when the system crashed, the terror of the Henderson disclosure, the exhaustion of the audit work, the pain of watching Trevor self-destruct. He thought about all the moments when staying quiet would have been easier, when bending the truth would have been more comfortable, when looking the other way would have been simpler. And he thought about where those choices had led, to this moment, this bench, this daughter beside him, this life that felt stable and secure and honest. "Daddy?" Lucy interrupted his thoughts. "What are you thinking about?" "Just that I'm glad I told the truth, even when it was hard." "See? Truth is like vegetables. Good for you." She grinned, ice cream on her chin. "Can we come back here on Saturday?" "We can come back here whenever you want." "Every Saturday forever?" "Every Saturday forever," Ethan agreed. They stayed until the park lights came on and a gentle voice over the loudspeaker announced closing time. Walking to the car, Lucy's hand in his, Ethan felt something settle in his chest. Not just peace, but pride. Pride in the work he'd done, the integrity he'd maintained, the example he'd set for his daughter. The glass tower of Riverton Dynamics rose against the darkening sky, visible from the parking lot. For 6 weeks, it had seemed impossibly intimidating. Now it was just his workplace, challenging, demanding, but no longer foreign. He'd walked into that building as an outsider, rejected and invisible. He'd leave it tonight as a director, respected and valued. The journey between those 2 points had been painful and difficult, and absolutely worth it. Because at the end of the day, Ethan could look at himself in the mirror and feel proud. He could look at Lucy and know he'd shown her that integrity mattered more than comfort. He could look at his work and know he'd made things better, even when making things better had been hard. And that, all of that, was enough. More than enough. It was everything.